Chair Lucido.
Sam, how many did you count like that?
At the particular table I was at, on the screen, I saw about a dozen.
You counted those yourself?
Yes. And in my affidavit, I believe I wrote down the ballot or the voter numbers, registration numbers.
Did they have different names on the ballot?
Yes. And these ballots came in, they were all in envelopes, military ballots. They had been logically mailed back. And I found it interesting because they were all in pretty stationary envelopes. And I thought, oh, well, maybe the military did gifts from their families or friends. But stationary, because every one of them was in really cool looking stationery.
But they were different?
Yes.
So when you mentioned that you see ballots, when you see signatures, names, date of birth, you're not actually seeing those on the ballot, right? You're seeing those on an envelope.
The date of birth were on the laptop, on the screen.
Okay.
So at the tables, they had a laptop set up over here, and in the corner there was a large screen that we could view what was actually on the laptop screen.
But I just want to be clear. I mean, those pieces of evidence are not actually on the ballot itself. Okay. Any other questions from members? All right. Thank you so much for your time today. Any other questions? Mr. Brian Kennebeck. After him, we have Emma Colangaretti and then Melissa Carone. Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee, sir.
Thank you, Chairman McBroom. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and thank you, Vice Chair Lucido. I appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. I drove through a snowstorm from Macomb County to get here today because I felt it was very important. It was very important to do everything in my power to help preserve the republic that was established 245 years ago. Great patriots gave their lives for this republic, and we're about to see it start slipping away from us if we don't preserve election integrity in this country. So I want to give some general observations of specific events that I witnessed on the 2 days that I served as a poll challenger at the TCF Center in Detroit. And it's important to note that I applied to work at the TCF Center online. I was referred to a website to apply to specifically work at the absentee voter counting board, and I never heard back from them. So I did follow up after a couple weeks of no reply. I called. There were 3 different phone numbers to contact on that website. I called all 3 of them, did not get answers, so I left voicemails at all 3 of those numbers. Again, I did not receive a reply. So at that point, we were within a week or 2 of the election, and I wanted to participate, so I volunteered to work as a poll challenger. I had applied to work there because I heard Detroit was short of poll workers. Obviously, that wasn't true, or else they saw that I identified as a GOP with the GOP party, so they never returned my calls or responded to my application. So that initially I found concerning right off the bat. I did not prepare a statement for my remarks today, so I'll be using the sworn affidavit that I submitted to a lawyer named Sean Flynn, who's working directly with Rudy Giuliani on collecting evidence. Sworn statements. I hear in the media all the time that there's no evidence, there's no evidence. We met in Macomb County about 3 weeks ago with Sean Flynn and one of the GOP offices, and he walked out of there with a stack of
Alright, guys. They're taking a break. I don't know, can you guys hear me talking? I got my mic turned on.
That was about
Can you hear them?
just over 2 hours, I guess, of initial testimony. We are live. If you're just now joining us, we are in Lansing, Michigan, for the public discussion, the Senate oversight hearings here in Michigan in regards to the 2020 presidential election. Before we get into a recap of what we found out, we do want to make sure that we let you know that all of this is brought to you by our friends Mike Lindell and Lilith Phillip. We are so thankful to have Mike and MyPillow.com a part of this team here at Viceside.
Yes, and please use our code RSBN at checkout at mypillow.com to get a huge saving. And with Christmas coming around the corner, you can not only shop for your human beings that you love, but you can also shop for your pets as well. So check them out at mypillow.com. Use our discount code RSBN at checkout.
Yeah, get up to 66% off on a lot of their products there. So we're happy to have Mike Lindell and MyPillow.com a part of this broadcast today. But that just, it looks like they took a short 5-minute break, but let's just kind of fill up your thoughts over the last couple hours. We have heard numerous testimony come out in regards to voter fraud here in the state of Michigan.
Contentious. People are committed to wearing foreign clothing and working directly with Giuliani and collecting evidence on the stages. We're hearing the media all the time. There's no evidence. There's no evidence. We met. With federal law enforcement, but
I think it's, you know, it's going off my microphone for some reason. Let me try and fix this, you guys.
it's contentious. People are really fed up, and that just, you can see it based upon the people who are outside. They realize that this election, there is major fraud in this election, and it'll start to unfold over the course of time. Right now, we just have to wait, and we have to go through the process. So
It almost seems defiant, Lilith. You and I looked at each other several times during this, and of course, some of the votes coming out of Wayne County historically have been Democrats, and one of the things I brought up here silently was, what if that's been corrupt year after year? This whole thing needs to be broken apart and re-examined.
I couldn't help myself but jot down some notes here on my phone. Some of the witness testimonies were absolutely outstanding. I had to let you know what's been going on. So the first thing that they mentioned right off the bat was Ethernet cables. So they were talking about the internet connection and how it causes for outsiders to
Let's see if we can hear now.
into the system. So there's Ethernet cables attached to one another, and so when you have one device that's attached to the internet in that service, they're all attached, so that you can actually hack into
No,
the
that's
system
still my voice,
and,
huh?
think for yourself, fill in the blank.
Hold on, guys. I'm trying to figure this out.
People were also able to get the admin
Desktop audio is
to
my
the
voice,
service,
huh?
to the servers.
Hold on, guys. I'm trying to figure this out.
So anybody from another country
Desktop
can
audio
even
is
hack
my
into the United States election here. And so
I'm not used to using the software, guys, so.
And in just Detroit alone, 174,000 absentee ballots, 1,300 of them were deceased.
We have heard so much, and also in terms of
Alright.
voter intimidation.
I'll get it. Don't worry. Give me a few minutes.
To be allowed in these rooms. We've heard stories.
And they're cheering as the GOP watchers are being removed out of these, TCF. They're just clapping them on as the GOP watchers are being removed.
Yeah, this is what, and that kind of stood out to me.
I also think it's important to note for our friends who will try to censor us for sharing this information that obviously not everything here is 100% verified, but these are sworn statements under oath, punishable by perjury. And that's simply what we're doing today here. We're presenting the information that is being presented to the Oversight Committee. So we're going to continue to do so, but there is certainly legitimate claims of fraud in this election.
And we saw some of that pushback earlier by some of the people on the panel, and it comes to a point where even here in the room, people sign a little bit, like, what really so defiant on just trying to answer these questions that are presented to the panel, and that we've seen some discrepancies in the voter machines. We've seen
It's only letting me use the built-in audio.
run some of these votes through a machine.
I'm gonna stop this and start over. Wait a minute, let's see.
It is locally, for all these people to not have their place. 8.1 million registered voters in Michigan. like they're not being heard locally. Imagine that on a grander scale. Imagine what President Trump is like.
Here we go.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. I'm Joshua Phillip, senior investigative reporter with the Epoch Times, and we stand for truth and tradition. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This isn't just a mission of the paper, it's a mission of those involved in it. It's something we truly believe in. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interest, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a nonpartisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. Our values are truth. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would enslave this country in darkness, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
The biggest mistake women can make when it comes to reducing wrinkles is not understanding where they come from. I recently turned 65, and what changed it all for me is knowing how to block what may be the root cause of loose and sagging skin. And learning this is what gets women the kind of transformation that wows their friends and family. They've probably tried every product on earth, but if they're not focused on blocking this one aging protein, then it's unlikely they'll ever see any kind of real change. My dermatologist, Dr. J, made a free presentation that explains it all.
You're the first one who marked that, so I hadn't even been looking at that box anymore. So, Austin Kreutz, are you available? Austin Kreutz. Austin. After him will be Dr. Michael Dubiel, followed by Michael Halls or Halves. Anyone seen Austin Kreutz? Is Dr. Dubiel available? Is Michael Halves or Halls available? It might be Haynes. Yeah, it could be. Jacqueline Zaplinti or Zaplet? It definitely starts with a Z. Lori Eba. I'm going to run through these names one last time, but we can't hold up the show forever. Austin Kreutz. Jacqueline, please go ahead. I will keep these other cards on top briefly for after Jacqueline's testimony in case they're.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Paris, and I have an important question for anyone with arthritis. Which one of these foods contains a protein that can make your arthritis pain worse? You'll learn the answer in this quick 3-minute video. Here's what happened when people like you with arthritis stopped eating this protein.
Sorry guys, I'm fixing it right now.
I'm Teresa Hershey. About a year and a half ago.
Let's refresh it. There we go. Let's get back. No.
There was a couple questions that I wanted to answer that I heard earlier.
There we go.
So I'm going to kind of go off script, but I don't think you guys realize that on, when you go to vote in person and you're feeding your ballot into a tabulator box, and I was the tabulator inspector at precinct 205 in Detroit, it goes in. If there's an error, it comes right back out at you. You see the screen, you have an option to either correct your ballot or resubmit it as is.
Sorry, let me turn it off.
So then it goes into the locked
My bad,
box. It
guys.
is never opened until the end
still learning
of
the program.
the
Let me turn my
day
mic off.
after polls close at 8 p.m. And then it is, you know, opened up, processed, put into sealed envelopes, and so forth. So the high-speed tabulators look more like, that were at the TCF Center, look more like a printer. And so they were fed 50 ballots at a time, sometimes in stacks of up to like 200. They were each, you know, individually, rubber band at 50 at a time was the way we were taught, that's directed to do. And they just came out the back. They were in a bin there, an open bin. So they could grab them all and refeed them. So I don't know if, you know, you all had a clear picture of that sense of, you know, they were just open and available to basically, oh, you get an error, grab it back, feed it through again. So that's where a lot of the repetition, I think, happened. Also, as far as training is concerned, I did 2 classes, each were for about an hour. I was trained as a poll worker, which then I was credentialed as a ballot box inspector in the precinct. Then I was also trained as a poll challenger, which was for about an hour also, and then credentialed as a poll challenger, which I worked at the TCF Center. So I kind of had a little bit of a advantage, I felt like, because I did both trainings. However, both trainings were pretty ridiculous. Really didn't teach you much of anything. There were multiple copies of things that were, you were presented with and able to take home. You could reference later, but the training was really non-existent.
Thank you.
So,
I appreciate your testimony, and I was going to actually ask if you could explain why you feel the training was not helpful.
well,
Or adequate.
as a poll worker, I trained at Wayne County Community College. There was just no substance to it. There was no, other than working through the copies of the information that were given, there was no substance. They didn't tell you anything. They didn't say what to do if there was an error. Who do you contact? You were given like minimal to no information.
And who provided this training?
The Detroit or Wayne County Department of Elections.
Okay.
Also, you were almost threatened or taught to threaten a poll challenger. They came right out and said, you don't have to listen to them, you don't have to speak to them, they can't get near you, they cannot talk to you, you don't answer them, and if they continue to question you, then call the police. Literally, that's what the instructor told us to do. Call the police, have them removed.
Thank you. Any other members have a question? Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Okay, going back to the top of the pile, Austin T. Kreutz. Has anyone seen Austin T. Kreutz? All right. Dr. Michael Dubiel. Okay. Michael Haynes or Halls. Lori Eba, please come on up. And then on deck, we will have Braden Giocabazi and Andrew Miller. Welcome, Ms. Eba.
Thank you so much. I am a resident of Oakland County. I live in Milford. I've been here all my life, not necessarily in Milford. I grew up in Detroit. I was a Republican poll challenger both on Tuesday and Wednesday. On Tuesday, things went pretty well, and I was trained by the GOP party. Tuesday, things went very well. When I was called back in early on Wednesday morning, I came back into the room. I could not believe, number one, how many more people were there, the tension in the room, and where did all these ballots come from? When I'd left on Tuesday, most of the tables had been complete. The table I was overseeing at the time still had about 200 ballots left, but it certainly didn't look like there was going to even be enough for a night shift. I was very surprised to see the level of activity on the following morning. As you've already heard from many people who've had my positions, there was a lot of intimidation and hostility vented toward the Republican challengers. I experienced a lot of that as well. Right away, of course, we know rules were broken because there were very, very few. I counted less than 5 when there was the hand raise of Republican poll workers in the room. There's supposed to be 1 at every counting table, at least, and there wasn't. I didn't see the ones back at the tabulator areas or the adjudication, so there may have been a few more back there, but I counted less than 5. In addition, by midday on Wednesday, there were no more Republicans allowed into the room. There was a lot of intimidation around those who were in the room, particularly the men and the lawyers, and they were hauled out forcibly by the police for really no good reason, while the whole room of workers cheered. This is intimidating. They stood and they cheered repeatedly as Republicans were hauled out for doing their job. This is wrong. I personally was the victim of 2 different accounts of intimidation, one by workers, supervisors included, and one by Republican poll challengers or watchers. In both cases, I had raised my hand to challenge a ballot. In one case, the ballot was being duplicated. I was being prevented from watching because only 2 workers were doing it, and they were shoulder to shoulder. I'd moved into about 3 feet or so behind them so I could look over their shoulders. The supervisor came over and told me I had to get out of there at least 6 feet away. I told her that by the rules, election rules, I could move in during the time that I was watching the ballot while it was being duplicated.
1 minute left.
She was yelling at me. And that ballot ended up being duplicated in error. We got a high enough supervisor to stop that. The second time I was surrounded by Democrat challengers who, again, were yelling at me, calling me a racist, telling me my mother didn't love me, all kinds of, stupid but meant to intimidate things. This is wrong. We all deserve a fair ability to vote our conscience and to participate in the election process. This did not happen at TFC, and it needs to be audited, and we're counting on you to do it. Thank you. I've submitted my comments so you can read the whole thing on your own.
Thank you very much, Ms. Eba. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your time today. Next, the doctor is here? All right. Dr. Michael Dubiel. Then on deck is still Braden Giacobasi, and then Andrew Miller. Dr. Dubiel, I apologize. We took that little break there, and I hadn't read who was on deck, so people might have gotten a little far away. So appreciate your forbearance. Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I was a poll challenger at TCF Center. I worked 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. I saw a few things, and I tried to make several statements to several different organizations. And I had nobody really follow up with me, or when I did get a statement back from my affidavit, it was different from what I had spoke over the phone. A few things that I saw, right off the bat, I saw table supervisors distinguished with the emblem on the chest, wearing political statements. Saw Black Lives Matter on masks. I saw t-shirts, undershirts wearing Black Lives Matter, which I didn't know was appropriate. The table I worked at, I saw several ballots that I challenged. One, through the process, the scanning of the ballot, the computer popped up a little box that said duplicate ballot already processed. I challenged that. I saw a ballot that was opened up that was completely blank, front and back. At the end of the night, I asked my table supervisor if our numbers matched and if it reconciled. She said it did. And then she told me, we decided to take the ballots that were challenged, the provisional ballots, and they will be tabulated. She told me the tabulator ultimately uncovers errors with ballots, that they would be spoiled by the tabulator. And I thought that was interesting. And I asked her again, and she assured me that tabulator would correct the error. And that's interesting because when I gave that statement over the phone, that was never put in my affidavit. And I have yet to make an affidavit because I tried to give it to a couple of people and nobody's followed up with me. Or if they followed up with me, it was inaccurate information.
1 minute left.
Okay. And to me, that's a big deal. I also saw the ballots being dropped off about, I don't know, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I was actually standing next to the lead attorney, and we were all talking about why are these ballots showing up as late as they did. I thought that was interesting. Those were the main things that I saw. When I first arrived, this was interesting as well. I was wearing a mask, and I was fidgeting with it because it was itchy. There was a gentleman who was a table supervisor. Again, he had the emblem on his breast. And he basically called me a bioterrorist. He basically said I was killing people. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And he was going to kick me out if I continued to itch my face because I was wearing an itchy mask. And I kept on trying to ask him, does everybody have to have this standard of wearing a mask? Because I saw numerous workers not wearing masks properly. Eventually, as he called me an agitator, I pointed to a gentleman. I said, does he have to wear his mask? And he didn't respond to me. And I wanted to stay in there because he told me he was going to arrest me because he identified himself as a Wayne County, working for the Wayne County Sheriff's Department.
Thank you. I would like to know about the ballot that you said you saw that was blank.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what the disposition of that became?
What do you mean, the disposition of that?
What happened to it?
It was put in the folder to be tabulated, and it was ran through the tabulator from what my table supervisor told me.
But it was blank, so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She said then the tabulator would uncover that, and then it would be spoiled at that time.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another ballot that you challenged specifically?
Absolutely, because when they scanned it, the little window popped up on the computer. It said duplicate already processed.
So what happened with that?
So they initially put it into the provisional ballot folder like they should have.
Okay.
And I thought that was great. And I was like, awesome, we got a process that's working here. And then when I went up at the end of my shift, because I was told there was going to be reinforcements. So I left at 5 a.m. It was a long day. And I'm from Grand Rapids. She told me that all of the ballots in the provisional folder would be taken out and put into the folder to be tabulated because the tabulator would uncover the error. The tabulator would find out that this was a duplicate ballot. And I asked her that twice because I was under the impression that the tabulator is a counter. So I asked her, how will the tabulator uncover that? She told me, and she assured me, the tabulator would uncover the error.
Okay. All right. Any other members have a question? Senator Santana, please.
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned that some of the people had on shirts that said black people matter, right? Or what did you say?
Black Lives
Matter. Yeah. Okay. Did anybody have on a shirt that said vote for this person, vote for that person?
Not that I was aware of.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
But distinguished on the face masks,
right.
and it was, I want to make this clear, it was underneath the T-shirt of the table supervisors. It wasn't outward, it was underneath the T-shirt that they were wearing.
I understand.
Chairman.
Thank you.
With all due respect, I mean, there's a sign right here that says black votes for Trump. So, I mean.
I don't believe that, I don't believe that there is a statute that prohibits the wearing of non-political candidate shirts. So it may, so now on to Senator Tice, please.
Thank you very much. So thank you for your testimony today. I have a question about, you said between 3:34, you said that there were ballots that that came in late. Can you tell me what it is specifically that you saw that came in? Were you outside and you watched the truck and you watched them unload, or were you inside and watched them bring in the ballots? What was your...
Well, I was inside the TCF Center, and I
Okay.
watched them bring ballots in on carts, boxes of ballots.
So they were like open boxes where you could see the ballots in, or
Yeah,
you saw them?
they were no different than the ones that were already there. And then what they did is they put them out, and so there was a center raised stage, and then they had tables off to the side, and they would put the ballots off where they were already picking up the ballots, how they were doing normal business, right? I was under the impression that all of those should have been segregated and separated. Well, they weren't. They were put right up there, and then the person or the people that were running the election process basically encouraged the table supervisors in the tables to come up and get work. That's how they were describing it. Come up and get work. Come up and get work. So those ballots, they were running ballots.
Thank you. Senator Tice, did you have more questions? Or?
Just one more. Did you have any idea how many there were, or do you have any way of knowing?
Yeah, so the attorney that was there, or the counsel that was there, we were all trying to take a rough estimate, and it looked like there was maybe 60 boxes of those ballots, and in each one of those sleeves or boxes or whatever, there could have been hundreds of ballots. So we're thinking maybe several thousand, tens of thousands. I'm not sure the exact number. Because who knows how stuffed they were? Who knows? But I definitely saw those ballots come in. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any idea where anybody say where all this came from?
No.
All right,
And I left my table to go over there because I was curious about that.
Okay. Senator Lucido?
Yeah, it's intriguing. What time of the morning was it when you saw this come in? Or what time of the evening was it?
Like you said, 3-ish, 4 in that window.
In the afternoon?
No. I was there from
3 or 4 in the morning?
I was there at 10 p.m. to 5 a.m.
They were in mail sleeves, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody have any earmarkings of who they were carrying these ballots? Were they carrying them? Were they on a dolly?
Yeah, they were on a dolly. Yeah, they were on a dolly. Do I know who they were? Absolutely not. But there were people that were doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lucido. Senator Santana?
Was there any particular reason you didn't ask for a supervisor to question, the ballots coming in on a dolly or?
Well, I didn't figure I needed to because the lead counsel that was supposed to be there was taking tally, and I was there standing right next to him. So I figured he was kind of the person that was overseeing the whole night. That's what we were told. No, we were talking directly about why are these coming in. We all thought it was interesting that these ballots were coming in so late. What was his response?
So
we
can use
were
the
trying to
microphone,
take.
Sorry.
What was his response, sir?
We were taking count, and we were his exact response I couldn't recall, but we were definitely perplexed that these were coming in so late, as well as they were being put out to be counted.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it. I have a large stack of cards yet to go through and would very much like to provide this opportunity for those who've taken the time to be here. If there is somebody here who has some credibility with the crowd and has the opportunity to share with them that their disorder is only disrupting what they're trying to accomplish, I'd appreciate you taking that time to do that. Otherwise, I'll have to be forced to adjourn the meeting if it gets so difficult to hear anymore. So. We'll continue. I'm not stopping the meeting at this point. I'm just suggesting that somebody suggest to the audience outside that they are disrupting the meeting in here, and it will cease if they can't control themselves.
Do you think that we can control an audience by one person or a couple people going up there?
If the audience inside also needs that same assistance, we can adjourn the meeting for that reason too. I've I have worked hard to put this together, and I would appreciate the opportunity to continue the work and listen to the folks who've taken the time to be here. At this time, next up we have Braden Giocabazi. After him, I have Andrew Miller, followed by Robert Cushman. Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee, sir. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Braden Giocabazi. This testimony is based on my sworn affidavit that I submitted. I am an unaffiliated Michigan voter who was trained by the GOP to be a poll challenger on Wednesday, November 4th, beginning in the late morning until around 8 p.m. because I was told that they needed help. They were understaffed. I witnessed the room erupt in thunderous applause and derogatory cheering as Republican poll workers were picked off one by one and ejected from the room repeatedly by police escort throughout the day. By the end of the day, they had picked off so many GOP poll workers that there were probably only a few dozen left to monitor all of the processing stations in the room, which I'm told was between 130 and 160. Because of this, I had to move between several tables. One was processing a stack of roughly 35 ballots with pink challenge stickers on them. Many other tables also had similar stacks on them as well. None of the ballots appeared to be in the poll database, so the poll workers were simply entering 1/1/1900 as the birth dates and entering the addresses and names that no one seemed to be verifying and which I could not see to verify. When I would politely try to check such things, as had been the case throughout the entire day, I was told that I wasn't allowed within 6 feet of the tables even to verify ballots, and told that I was trying to kill people. I watched as the table simply passed in mismatched ballots and envelopes through the checking station. When I challenged it, and subsequent ballots that weren't in the poll book, the table supervisor laughed and said, "You can't do that." And several other operatives gave me the COVID runaround as I had gotten throughout the day, all trying to intimidate me and prevent me from doing my job, claiming that I was endangering their workers, trying to kill their people, and even holding a pen in a threatening way. Yet, when non-GOP operatives would stand near the tables and harass me, no one would give them any problem at all. At one point, a Democrat who was hanging back came up to harass me, and then a table supervisor showed up and because I was challenging a ballot. Once several table managers and non-GOP operatives have showed up to harass me, this Democrat operative simply melted back into the background with a satisfied grin on his face, knowing that he had caused me a problem. These people were like professional agitators whose job it was to sow discord among GOP workers who were trying to do their job and then get them kicked out. At some point, a GOP lawyer was brought in and confirmed that I was properly performing my duties. Instead of backing down, the table supervisor's supervisor and his supervisor and all the damn supervisors, they came up and they started arguing with the lawyer, telling him he didn't know what the law was.
1 minute.
In the meantime, the ballots continued to go through, so I stepped up to the table to inspect the next ballot briefly. The manager separated me from the table, wielding COVID as a weapon one more time, and walking towards me, forcing me to step further away. He made some innuendo about playing with him that made me uncomfortable, and then he said something to the effect of, "I will kick your ass or I will kick you out of here." And I said, and I looked at him and I quizzically, and I said, "Are you threatening me?" He repeated the mantra more than once as he began to wave down a police officer. I raised my voice so that others could hear what was going on, and at this point, and I said, "Are you threatening me?" And at this point, the police officer arrived, and I did not ask any questions, and I was removed from the room without any due process. Realizing I had no recourse or rights, I grabbed my coat, and I peacefully was escorted. I'd like to say one final thing.
Please wrap it up.
Okay. I saw several dozen military ballots throughout the day. I only saw 3 that were for President Trump, and I was also at your hearing the other day when the clerks were testifying, and one thing that stood out to me as a glaringly obvious thing, as an engineer, I'm a technical person, I love math, I have a fair bit of programming under my belt. Those people were not IT specialists. They know nothing. I assume they appeared to know nothing about programming, and yet they said multiple times throughout that hearing that it was the most secure election in history, and I would like to say that it seems like they have no credentials to be able to say that.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Senator McDonald.
Yeah, it's kind of a question for the group. I've been hearing a lot of troubling stories about harassment. So sick, I don't even want to say them. You're saying people call you a murderer, they're going to kick your ass, all these things. It sounds like there's a lot of experience in this room, poll watching. Have any of you ever experienced anything to that level ever before, any other election process?
So,
never? Is this, it seems unprecedented, the type of stories that you're sharing, so.
This was my first election. I didn't come there to agitate. Think I'm a likable guy. I came in there on Wednesday because I was told they were understaffed, so I thought this would be a good chance to just see how the process works. If I would have thought that it was going to be that much of a madhouse against the GOP people and it was so biased, I would have been there every day. I was not there with an agenda. I was there to just do my job, and they didn't like that simply because I had a GOP lanyard on, even though I'm an unaffiliated voter. They didn't know that.
Sounds like from the stories you're sharing, it was a complete sideshow. Hopefully that doesn't continue.
Professional agitator. That's the word that I would use to describe these people. They would melt back into the background as soon as they knew that they had accomplished their job of getting you agitated or kicked out.
Thank you.
They knew what they were doing.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Next, we have Andrew Miller, followed by Robert Cushman, followed by Andrew Sito. Welcome, Mr. Miller. You have
Hello.
3 minutes.
My name's Andrew Miller. I was a poll worker on Tuesday and Wednesday. I originally applied to be a poll worker, but nobody ever got back to me. I tried twice to call the phone number for assistance. Both times I was on for over an hour on hold with no response, no way to leave a message. Let's get to it though. Probably the most egregious one was on Tuesday evening after most of the tables had shut down. One table was still working at duplicating ballots. When I got there, there was 25 ballots that they were duplicating. One person quietly sat back and supposedly read the information, but from 6 feet away, I could not hear anything that he said. The other worker was filling in the ballot while being hunched over it, and there was another worker at the end of the table so that I could not see what was on the table. I had duplicated a ballot earlier that day. It was quite open. It worked well. I was asked by a table supervisor to participate in it. The ballot was stained. We worked through it. Everything was cool. We went to this one, and they were duplicating it, and I told the table manager that I needed to see those results, and he said I couldn't. And I said, why not? This is my job. I need to be able to see what the differences are between these two. And he said, no, duplicating ballots is just like voting. It's a personal endeavor, and I was not allowed to look at it. I stayed there for 4 ballots, and it all happened the same. I asked to challenge the ballots, and he said he would not be doing that. What else is there? Okay, I am also an engineer, so let's get to some of that. Every computer on Tuesday morning had an error code in the right-hand corner that says update was overdue. It was flashing on every single computer I looked at. I looked at least 20 of them. Also, about a third of the computers had the wrong time. At 10 a.m. in the morning, about a third of the computers said 2:59 p.m. I don't know how they keep track of when things are occurring when the time on the computer is not even correct. On Wednesday, I walked up to a table, and one of the computer operators was logging in, and she logged in as an admin. So she had full authority to do anything she wanted into that system. Did everybody in that facility use the admin in order to log into the computers? I also saw the routers with high amount of transferring and work when there was nobody even monitoring the copy machines that were collecting the ballots. Nobody was at the computers, but there was a lot of data going across those. I also was harassed by a number of people. At one table, there was...
Sir, I forgot to give you your 1-minute warning, so I'll give you some additional time.
I'm pretty much done, but
please, 30
just
seconds.
the harassment from, there was a table worker, then there was a Democrat worker, then there was me, and the table worker said that I needed to back up because I was too close and I did not have the 6-foot distance. But there was a person between her and myself that was a Democrat challenger. A lot of this could go away if you had one Republican at each table. I applied to be a worker. You've heard here multiple people applied to be workers, and we are all denied that. So instead of having these hearings, why don't we have a clean process? It would not fix the computer glitches that came through, but it would fix a lot of this other issues.
Thank you. Any members have a question? Senator Tice.
You said you applied to be a poll worker. When did you apply?
More than a month before the election.
So well in advance of the training, because
Oh, yes, it was before the training.
Okay, because we heard from the clerk in Wayne County that the people who applied that were denied were people who applied too late and the training had already been done. So I
No,
just wanted to clarify.
there was still training scheduled when I applied.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you for your time today. Did you submit your testimony in writing by any chance?
My affidavit contained
Okay.
everything that I had except for the admin.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Robert Cushman, and he'll be followed by Andrew Sito, followed by Shane Trejo. Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee, Mr. Cushman. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Senator McBroom, Michigan legislators, and fellow citizens. My name is Bob Cushman. I'm a registered voter in Lyon Township, and I desire to testify concerning events in Detroit on November 4th, the day after the election. I believe that I witnessed evidence of mass election fraud on the morning of November 4th and the evening of November 4th, but I'm only going to talk about the morning right now. While I served as a trained and credentialed election challenger at the Detroit Absent Voter County Boards, TCF Center, Detroit. I arrived in the county boards at approximately 6:30 a.m. after being briefed in room 260. We'd been advised of a very large ballot drop, approximately in the vicinity of 4 a.m. Night shift observers had indicated that about 61 boxes had been delivered. I began observing the process of ballots at several counting boards. I quickly noticed that none, and I mean none, of the names were being scanned from the ballots were in the electronic poll books. All of the names that were found in the supplemental sheets. We know that the poll books, the electronic poll books, were updated on Sunday, November 1st. That meant that all of these new ballots had to have been brand new registered voters on Monday, November 2nd, or Tuesday, November 3rd. I found it very hard to believe that tens of thousands of people had registered in just 2 short days. So I began writing down the names on the ballots immediately after they were scanned by the computer poll worker. As soon as I began, I was severely obstructed by 5 different persons that I could no longer could no longer continue my legal responsibility as a poll challenger. These 5 persons comprised of a poll worker, a supervisor, an uncredentialed person, a Democrat challenger, and one of the top leaders of the AVCB. The details can be found on my affidavit. Does anyone believe that 30 or 40,000 new voters were actually signed up legally in 2 days? I implore every member of this board to protect the Constitution. I implore you to give us a full forensic audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cushman. Does any member have a question? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Cushman. Did you submit your testimony in writing as well? Mr. Cushman, can you give us a testimony, a copy in writing as well? Thank you very much. Next, I have card for Andrew Sito, followed by Shane Trejo, and then Linda Brandis. Andrew Sito?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee. You have 3 minutes.
So my job was to be stationed at the TCF Center. I was in the middle of the room near the duplicate ballots. There's a table full of duplicate ballots. Throughout the whole night, I witnessed theft of duplicate ballots. My job was to follow them back to their tables of the counting boards, and where they would just take stashes of ballots, 4 or 5 ballots, take them to the table. I would stand there for 4 or 5 minutes. They wouldn't make any duplicates, never follow any duplicate procedures. They stashed them under their boxes, never put them in the bins. I couldn't do much about it, just write incident reports about it, which are documented. So, and then we had a new shipment announcement by Mr. Baxter at 4:30 a.m. on the microphone. He's saying, hey, we're going to have some ballots coming in. So these boxes of ballots were brought in by Mr. Baxter and his team at 4:30 a.m. from the rear of the room of the TCF Center. So approximately, I witnessed them bringing in boxes from the rear end of the room into the room. This is between 4:30 and 5. I estimate around 84 boxes placed on tables in the center of the room. Each box with approximately 600 ballots, totaling to approximately 50,000 ballots, equal to the 2 rounds before. Because we were there from 10 to 1, we did a round about 50,000, and then 1 to about 4, a second round about another 50,000, and then this last round, all you have to know is there's the same amount of ballots from the other 2 rounds. I'm not sure if they were all brought in from the back, because I think they were commingled and also brought in from other rooms. So I'm not sure how many ballots were brought from the back and then from the other areas, but they're put in all. It was just about the same amount. So most volunteers left at 5 a.m. and the poll workers had a shift change between 5 and 6 a.m. I stayed. At 6 a.m., Mr. Baxter and the management got back on the microphone and yelled, "This is what democracy is supposed to look like," in front of everyone with the new shift. Right after that, the whole room cheered, and you can tell that there was not a balancing in the poll workers there, even at that shift. Based off my sampling, because I was
1 minute.
Okay, sampling off of the dozen of the duplicate ballots from 6 to 2 p.m. 2 p.m. the next day, none of those were for Trump. The other 2 rounds, I only saw 1 for Trump. 3 other challengers told me they witnessed the same sampling. I challenged ballots, all refused. Challenging procedure never properly carried out. Never issued challenge ballots, no track or remedy, no record. I resorted to writing incident reports. Poll workers changed duplicate ballots to straight Democrat tickets. That's why you see in the tabulators 2 different tickets. I witnessed employees filling in bubbles for the Democrat straight ticket. And so at the tabulator, I also witnessed what the Dominion employee said with the re-rendering of the ballots. I saw that several times. At 2 p.m., I left the room for 5 minutes. Right after I left the room, they blocked it out, covered the windows up. I couldn't get back in for exceeded COVID capacity. I called the federal prosecutor. I called the FBI, made a report. I called the Secretary of State fraud tip line. I called Detroit Department of Elections multiple times, and there was no answer.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I have a quick question. When it comes to the duplicate ballots that you were in the middle of the room watching, those are blank ballots for the purpose of refilling out when necessary?
Yeah.
And so you were solely in charge of watching those?
There's a few of us, but there's too many tables, so when people would come and grab ballots, and for example, if there was like a coffee stain or something, which I never saw that night, they all looked like clean ballots, we would follow them back, and there would be several people in line waiting to follow that person back. And so once that process was done, I would come back to the center table and wait for the next person to come in.
What's your recollection, with the group of ballots that came in at 4:30 and you stayed and began observing, and you say that, there was almost every one of them or all of them were for Mr. Biden. About how many ballots would you say you observed at that point?
That shift, probably my sampling is over a dozen of duplicate ballots. And also we had some issues where we were making duplicates of the duplicate ballots. And when I asked the employees why we were making duplicates of duplicates, they confirmed to me that this is a duplicate of duplicate, but the tabulator said unknown reasons.
So they were throwing away their first duplicate to replace it with a second one was what was, okay, but so you're saying you observed several dozen ballots in that time?
That one shift from the 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., I sampled about a dozen duplicate ballots, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Vice Chair Lucido.
I appreciate you coming out, and I appreciate everybody being so patient to go through this process. At the end, your testimony has been submitted to us by way of written, or is there affidavit?
Yes, affidavit is submitted.
Perfect. These ballots that were brought in the middle of the night, early morning, whatever you want to call it. Where did you see this go to? I'm looking at these numbers here, 84 boxes, 600 each in each box, over 50,000 ballots. Where did these ballots go?
They were just processed just like any other round. So they brought in from the back, which
In sleeves, again,
Yeah,
mail,
so-
mail sleeves? What I mean by that, you know what I'm talking about, the
yeah,
mail
banker
boxes.
boxes with sleeves over the banker boxes. The sleeves were removed. They opened up the lids and they placed them on about 10-foot tables.
Yep.
There's about 7 of them, and they placed about maybe like a dozen boxes per table, 10-foot tables. Banker boxes pulled, with the width, so they can place them out, and the ballots are facing towards you. And they were double stacked, filled to the top. Each bundle is about 50 ballots.
Got it.
So maybe like 150, 300 stacked on top, each box.
Did they, after they put them on these 10-foot tables, were workers taking the ballots and then putting them into the machine?
Yeah, so that's when Mr. Baxter said, this is what democracy is supposed to look like. Then they came in and took the ballots, the employees took the ballots, took them back to their processing tables, and everyone just did it at once. And most of the Republican workers were gone at that time.
50,000 roughly, right?
It was the same exact amount as the 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. round and the 1 a.m. round to 4 a.m. round.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see anything else after that period of time? Did you stay on? You stayed on till in the morning hours?
I stayed in until I was kicked out. I was not, they said, you can leave the room for a snack. I left the room for a snack and immediately they closed it down.
What
And
time was that?
Around 2 p.m.
Okay. So you were there 4 o'clock in the morning all the way?
Yeah, the whole shift.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
no problem.
Did you or anyone you know ask where the origin of the late-night ballot delivery was? What precincts it came from?
I did not ask. However, the person right next to me grabbed me by the, pulled me to the side and said, I see a truck at the loading dock coming in the back of the TCF center. And by the time I looked, Mr. Baxter and his management team were personally holding in boxes and carrying them in to the tables.
Senator Tice.
The other deliveries, they didn't come in this way?
No, this delivery was unlike every other that I witnessed from the other 2 rounds. Yeah.
Thank you.
See no further questions. Thank you very much for your testimony.
No problem.
Next, I have Shane Trejo, followed by Linda Brandis, followed by Bill Carzon. Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee, sir. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Shane Trejo. I'm going to be reading a little bit from my sworn affidavit and giving additional testimony, and I'll submit all that after the fact. I'm a registered voter and a credentialed poll challenger in the state of Michigan. I was a GOP poll challenger at the TCF Center Absentee Voter Counting Board in Detroit, Michigan on election night Tuesday from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. I was there at approximately 3 to 3:30 a.m. and I saw the huge dump of ballots that were delivered to the counting hall. I noticed that the City of Detroit Clerk's office there was their emblem on the white van that showed up with the ballots. Janice Winfrey's name was on there and a number presumably for Janice Winfrey's office. I estimated that it was over 50 boxes that I counted, and I estimate that up to 1,000 could have been fit in each box, large boxes. There was no chain of custody. There was no accountability. There was no transparency. Nobody knew where these ballots had been. They had to be turned in at 8 p.m. They showed up at approximately 3:30 a.m. So 7.5 hours is a long time for these ballots to be kind of in limbo, not with anyone knowing where they are. There have been no answers up to this point, and whistleblowers are being intimidated. There is a campaign of terror that is being instituted by people such as Attorney General Dana Nessel to coerce public officials into certifying the vote and rubber stamping this insanity as quickly as possible. Keep in mind that you could not videotape at TCF. It was strictly prohibited, potentially a criminal act. That's why all of these sworn affidavits, there's hundreds and hundreds of them, are so important, because they are the key proof that severe impropriety took place in Detroit on election night. So all we want is a proper, thorough, independent investigation into what the hundreds of whistleblowers are coming forth and saying, with a forensic audit of all the suspicious ballots. We know what these investigations would yield, and we suspect that the interests desperately trying to obstruct the investigations, I think we know I think they know what would be found as well. So I implore you to do the right thing, and for your country, for your family, for your conscience, and stop this fraud. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any members have a question? Oh, thank you very much for your time today. Next, I have Linda Brandis, followed by Bill Carzon, and then Christy Klamer. Linda, are you here or nearby?
I'll take her place.
Well, many of you have waited a long time, I know. We'll keep on going through the pile here. Linda Brandis? Okay. Bill Carzon, are you here? Mr. Carzon, I presume? Welcome to the
Bill
Senate
Carzon.
Oversight Committee.
Yes,
You
thank you
have
very
3
much
minutes.
for having me here to speak. I'm a resident of Wayne County, registered voter, poll challenger, was registered at the TCF Center. I was at the TCF Center from November 3rd, 10 p.m. till November 4th, around 5 a.m., so I was there during the observation of the ballots that came in that have been discussed many times. I was made aware of the process, obviously, with the counting board tables, so I did witness some things with ballots taken to tabulators and run. Some cases, they were run multiple times. Of course, there's a zeroing out. It wasn't always obvious to see how that was done completely. I witnessed on at least one occasion where operator number 5, who basically carries the ballots over to the stations for tabulation, was handed back a ballot. Didn't fully understand at that point why that would possibly be, because those are to be returned into the secure boxes. I would say between 1 a.m. and 4 in the morning, roughly, it was very quiet. It was a very big lull in the overall center. Many people can attest to folks with heads on tables. This was on not only the polling stations or the absentee ballot stations, but also at the tabulator table areas. In fact, I witnessed some person on a tabulator screen playing a card game. I sat there with my son, who was also there as a poll challenger, and another acquaintance as we watched this. So to give you the sense, there was a big lull. Around 4 o'clock, 3:30, I think I've heard 4 o'clock, is by my estimation, there was a delivery, I would estimate, because the table in the center next to the main stage is where the ballots were brought to. Somewhere at least 60 boxes were brought in. They did have a wrap around them, which was very, what I expected to be standard. When that work was basically prepared for people to come up and get it, the person called up and said, come and get your extra work. They were called up by precincts, and then those groups would come in small sections and take these back and then, run them to their table. So just to give you a feel for that environment and what was taking place. I was also taking the opportunity, because of the canvassing that was taking place, I was at the canvassing board meeting that Monica Palmer spoke about earlier, and I will just tell you, it was extremely hostile. It was very personal. It was very aggressive with regards to the threats that were made to her personally, her family.
1 minute left.
Yep. And I would just say that really didn't have any place, and nobody shut that down. It was high intimidation. And Mr. Kinlock, or his other representative on the Democratic side, made no comments to calm this down. So when the vote was taken to not certify, of course, there was a side discussion that actually had some other further developments that everybody's aware of. I would just say nobody talked about the fact that they had so many out of precinct locations. When the meeting began, a pile of affidavits were set on the table. Mr. Kinlock said they were received by himself in that day. They really weren't used, reviewed, or anything, just submitted to minutes. So really no benefit in providing that. The meeting was delayed by 2 hours to start, a very strange delay. As Monica said, there was no executive summary. The numbers were rattled off regarding out of balance. I would just say it was a very hostile environment, and the main takeaway from my side is, I think you guys know, an out of balance precinct can't be recounted. That doesn't make any sense. If it's out of balance, it should be.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Senator McDonald.
Thank you, sir. Sir, were you given any guidelines at all on how to do the work properly? Was there a chain of command of any type that you saw?
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that was
I
the
thought you were
question.
talking about information we received.
Yeah, was there a
beforehand.
chain of command? Were you given any guidelines whatsoever on how to do the work effectively?
There was information that was provided. Some people could watch video sessions that were provided with some information. There was some written material that was provided. So to some extent, and I heard about the on-site location activity, that was not extended as an opportunity to us, but we did get information and training and material that could be looked at to understand the process, yes.
So there was a semblance of organization?
With
Was it,
regards
it sounds
to the-
completely disorganized. Was there even a semblance of organization at all within
I
the
thought you were referring to my or our information to be a poll challenge.
Yeah, your witnessing of the poll challenge, was there any organization, even a semblance of organization?
I personally was on table number 18 mainly,
Okay.
and then I walked around. That table did a fairly, I think, consistent job. There were times where, poll worker, the person operator 1 to operator 2 may not have confirmed a number and name on the ballot, the scan and the handoff and this kind of closed loop process. I did witness that at other tables also being missed. When there was a 3-hour lull with people literally with their heads on the table, there was a lot of downtime there. And this wasn't just at the tables, this was right down the tabulator station too. And then at 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock, when that truck hit and the other work came, now I wasn't there after at 5 or so as, that's when we left, that these were counted, but I mean, there was a big lull there, so not very organized and structured. If a person can sit there and play a card game on a tabulator screen, clearly there's something missing in the organization.
Well, again, it's very troubling, but thank you for that information, sir.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Senator Lucido.
Thank you very much for being so patient. I don't want you to run so fast. I wish your gut reaction when you were there at that time of the morning and seeing these ballots coming in and not seeing any other ballots around for 2-3 hours before that, right? What was your feeling, or what was it that you made any reference to about those ballots?
Well, it was my first experience to be down there and be a poll challenger. I'm more involved in this year's cycle than I had been before. So for me, it was novel. I didn't know why they would be there. I started stepping back and asking myself, why would things close at 7 and 8? And then at 4 o'clock in the morning, this proliferation of ballots would arise. So I just had questions that just didn't seem to make sense from that perspective, but I think others maybe want to make comments as to why those were so late.
Are those boxes consistent with what you've heard the testimony? You were sitting here during the testimony earlier. Was all the boxes of ballots that were delivered to the TCF, you didn't see if they came in the back door, you didn't see?
I went to the back door when they came in, so I did see the truck. I did see them being unloaded. I saw a gentleman with a dolly that would bring some of them. I actually took the time to walk over to the tables in the center to watch them get stacked. I counted, I did a rough estimation because the tables were basically mostly empty. So I was able to get a general idea of how many were brought in at that time. And then at 5 o'clock, we were pretty much done with what we were doing that day.
Thank you very much. We have to leave, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being patient.
Yep, you're welcome.
Myself and Senator Irwin have another committee meeting for Judiciary and Public Safety.
Come back when you can.
We sure will.
Senators, thank you. Was that just Bill Carzon that we had? Or I'm sorry, thank you. Next, we have Christy Claimer, followed by Grace Norris, followed by Jeffrey Gorman. Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So my name is Christy Claimer. I'm a registered voter from Oakland County. I was a poll challenger at TCF on November 3rd from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and November 4th from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. on November 5th. I was there for a total of 35 hours. In those 35 hours, I experienced the chain of custody being broken in many different ways. I'm going to focus on 3 of them. Around 7:30 a.m. on November 3rd, over the microphone, everyone was asked how many Republican poll workers there were by a show of hands. When announced there were 2, I looked around and couldn't see any hands going up from where I was sitting. Not having at least one Republican poll worker at the 134 tables made it impossible for ballots to be duplicated legally. Also, there were no Republican poll workers to see the ballots being secured at the end of the process as well. Almost all the poll workers were told that they could go home at 11:30, this is on November 4th, p.m., even though none of the ballots were secured until hours after that. Tables with ballots were left unattended and not secure. And even at the end of the night, when they were pretty much wrapping up, just started going through every single one of them, and there was 8 that were locked, but they were not locked. We made sure they were locked. I think it was unintentional, but concerning. Also, I witnessed 46 ballots get put in manually, meaning they were not in the electronic system and they were not in the paper poll books. I recorded each name and ballot number along with how they had the birth date of 1/1/1900. I witnessed majority of these ballots being entered between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. on November 4th. I was unable to challenge a ballot due to the consistent intimidation, harassment, and verbal attacks throughout the day. This came from Democrat challengers, independents, a lawyer, team leaders, supervisors. I was threatened to be escorted out by a Democrat lawyer. I have a very different perspective on how secure our elections are, experiencing all that I did. It's very disturbing and disheartening. As you've heard today, there is much credible evidence that the chain of custody was broken time and time again, which created an election with no integrity. Michigan citizens are needing to trust our election system in our state. We are asking for a fair and honest election to be certified. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Clamer. Any members have a question? Oh, thank you very much. You've submitted your testimony in writing?
Affidavits are more
Okay,
than here.
thank you. Next, we have Grace Norris, followed by Jeffrey Gorman, followed by Jennifer Seidel. At the top of the hour, the chairman will take a 5-minute break for everybody, and I'll read off who's on the deck after that this time so we can be sure to expedite coming back to order. Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee, Ms. Norris. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a challenger at TCF Center from November 4th to November 5th, and I'm a registered voter in Ingham County. You can all can tell that I'm a new citizen. I love to learn things, and I love this country. So that's why I became a poll challenger. So I received my credential and waited in line since 12:37 p.m. November 4th. And so I wasn't allowed to get in there until 6:20 p.m. on the 4th. So many others were not allowed in there either. So that's number one. Number two, I walked to table 14, introduced myself as a poll challenger, and I wanted to ask, were there any Democrats or Republicans or nonpartisan independents? And the table manager told me, you can ask them, and nobody said anything. And they said, send away. So I felt, okay, well, that's kind of a little bit hostile. So number three, so when I walked around at 8:40 p.m. on the 4th, I saw a name appeared on 2 monitors. And why I paid attention, because that was a military ballot, and I saw later, and that's why I remembered this, this name. And then the fourth thing was the printing of the remarks and the voter list at the end of counting took as long as 4 hours. So the last shift was supposed to end by 9 p.m., but some of the prints did not get done until 1:30 a.m. on the 5th. And so one table had a gentleman tried to print a dozen times and failed, so he got so frustrated and he put his backpack on and just left without signing anything. So that's the fifth scenario I saw was.
1 minute.
Okay, thank you. So at about midnight, people called in and told them if they couldn't say they could leave. So sometime later, there were only like 2/3 of the people left. So the other thing I counted as, how many workers at each table left at that time. So I have the details, but I don't mention it here. So seventh, so one of the male Democrat poll challengers kept talking about, Joe Biden and Donald Trump. We were not supposed to talk politics. and 8th, some of the limit strip on the ballot cases were not put on, and some ballot, some postal mailbox were left open there, and that was concerning. So then I tried to, the last thing was, I was writing down the SEO number, and then 2 Democrats stood, blocked my view, and a supervisor came over, grabbed my credential, and took photo and left. So that's how I was treated. I hope that we had that process, so people can trust the system, and I came here for freedom and for liberty, but this was so disappointing, and I hope that our legislators would do something, make better policy to fix up the loopholes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time today and your testimony. Any questions?
Just very
Senator
quickly.
Tice.
Grace, it's amazing to see you. Thank you for all that you've done. She has worked her tail off for American integrity and elections. So I just wanted to say thank you. I know personally your efforts, and I very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love this country. I know all of us love this country.
Okay, we'll have time for one more, and then, like I said, the chair will take a break. So right now, we're looking for Jeffrey Gorman. Please come forward. And then on deck for after our break will be Jennifer Seidel, Jasmine Early, and Artisha Bomer. Mr. Gorman, welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Gorman. I live in Wayne County, in Garden City. Born and raised in Michigan, spent most of my life away from here, left when I was 17, came back 9 years ago. I was a retired Navy captain, retired airline pilot, and captain as well. And so integrity is very important to me because lives depend on it. I also went to a college where we had an honor concept, so we kind of frown on lying, cheating, and stealing. Well, I volunteered to be a poll challenger on the day after the election. Welcome Alice to the belly of the beast. It was a hostile environment from the Democratic lawyer that told me I didn't know what I was talking about when I was challenging, to I was briefed on 2 things to look for. One was when they were doing duplicate ballots, there was supposed to be a Republican and a Democratic witness. When they were doing the military ballots, I asked, where's the Republican witness? And they said, it's you. And I said, no, it has to be a paid worker. She says, well, I don't know what they are. The supervisor did, I don't know what they are. Ask him. So I asked him. The poll worker said, well, I ain't going to tell you. So it was obvious. I challenged it. They only, out of the 8 to 10 that I saw, they only took the challenge for the first one. They wouldn't record the challenge for the other ones. And the other thing I was told to watch out for was ballots that the name of the voter did not appear in the electronic or the supplemental. They had 2 that came in that met that criteria. They sent them back. They came back to the table again, so they raised the red flag to ask the supervisor, whatever the person's name is that was supposed to come in. She told them, oh, well, we checked these. These are on the list, so I'm going to show you how to get them and enter them in to the computer so that they appear, and then we can tabulate this. And they used the fictitious 1900 birth date in it. So I was only there for 2.5 hours. That was after, in the hostile environment. I got there at 12:30. Tried to go in at 2 o'clock. They wouldn't allow us to come in, even though we know Republicans, poll watchers had left, and they need to be replaced. They wouldn't let us in until 6 o'clock is when I got in. At 6:06 in Book 1, I was recorded. Left at 8:30. For those full 2.5 hours,
1 minute.
I watched violations of the rules that I was told to watch out for. Now, I said about my jobs, integrity was important because lives depended on it. Well, it's no less any important that we have integrity in the election because the life of the country as a democratic republic depends on it. This nonsense has got to stop. We got to take the steps that it takes that the legislature can take to make sure that we have fair elections, because I've never seen anything like this before. And like I said, this goes against my grain and everything that I know as a person, as a professional. And like I said, I don't want to ever see anything like that again.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any members have questions? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gorman. Again, we'll be hearing next from Jennifer Seidel, Jasmine Early, and Artisha Bomer. And I beg everyone's indulgence in a 5 to 10 minute recess. Thank you.
All right, that wraps up session 2 here in Lansing, Michigan. About a 5 to 10 minute break before they resume some testimony. We want to thank our partner of the day, which is a great guy, great company, Mike Lindell over at MyPillow.com. We know that getting a restful night's sleep right now is crucial to waking up on the right side of the bed. And with this Christmas just around the corner, what a perfect time to check out some of our favorite products from a Patriot-owned company. Go to MyPillow.com. That's MyPillow.com and stock up gifts for yourself and all of your loved ones this holiday season. Now, MyPillow guarantees the ultimate relaxation in a wide variety of items to choose from, ranging from the ultra plush towels, dog beds, mattress toppers, the Giza Dream Sheets, and more. Go to the inventory at MyPillow.com. That's MyPillow.com, and check this out right now. Use the code word RSBN in checkout, and you'll get a huge savings. Normally, this pillow is $69.98 on sale right now for $29.98. And a portion of that goes to right here at Right Side Broadcasting. So don't forget to use the code word RSBN at checkout and get up to 66% off. That is MyPillows.com. Looking at the crowd here, still very active in here. I'd say we've got about 45 to sometimes 50 people in here, depending on witnesses coming in here. We just wrapped up round 2 of the Senate hearings. And Lilith, what is your takeaway? Because it seems like the emotions are getting higher. They know that the more evidence that is announced here, it seems like the angrier people get.
It's a little bit vicious. I mentioned this during our previous break that we see the corruption from the panel here, the Democrats that we have on this panel. So when you see the corruption in the local level, you then look at the bigger picture of what the corruption looks like on a larger scale of what President Trump is dealing with. We had many individuals provide, these great testimonies, and for one very specific individual on the panel to kind of ask sort of demeaning questions, and I don't know, I was getting a really vicious vibe from her, and they were sort of demeaning some of the witnesses and kind of downplaying what they were saying, so it was not pleasant.
I think one of the things I keep hearing today is the voter intimidation as far as the elected officials or the officials to oversight the election here being bullied around by people within the election process. I'm also hearing a lot of reports of ballots coming in late at 3 o'clock in the morning, boxes and boxes of ballots.
Arriving at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Unmarked vehicles.
And I put this on my Twitter page. It almost sounds like something from a movie. We've got vans pulling up in the middle of the night, unloading cases of ballots. One witness said up to 1,000 bucks per case, and there's 50 cases. So if you do the math on this election, you kind of look at what's the area of this discretionary area of the amount of ballots that separates the two candidates. It might have well come in the middle of the night. This victory for Donald Trump in the state of Michigan might have come at about 3:40 in the morning, and this is just one of many, just one of many that we've heard here. Now, coming up, I will preview this. We have a very, so far she's been very charismatic in her need to testify in front of this Senate hearing here. She's up next. I think she's going to be a walking soundbite.
She said, "You will not silence my black voice."
Yes, and I'm looking
Darn
at her
right.
right now, and I know that she's going to bring a lot of intensity and a lot of passion to what she's seen over this election cycle. And this is far from over. And we spend our time on social media in the breaks here, and while the Senate hearings going on, we see the messages that's being put out by the mainstream media, and it is quite the opposite that we're hearing inside here. It's really amazing how much disinformation is out there.
It's really different when you're in the room witnessing it. I don't know how to explain it, but it's different when you read about it online, when you see videos, but when you're actually hearing it yourself, it's a different experience. And some things that I want to mention, over 6,000 votes were taken from homes that were either vacant or burnt, okay? This is just in one state we're talking about. Military ballots, all of the birth dates said January 1st, 1900, and you were not even allowed to question that. And when you were, they threatened and intimidated you. Again, military ballots were coming in. Only just one of our witnesses counted just 12 of those ballots that were coming in with birth dates January 1st, 1900.
Mm-hmm. And also get back to the Dominion voting system, the amount of the wires and fraudulent, opportunities for something to happen in that regard. We've seen that, Philip. We've seen the talk on the tech side of things, how there weren't anybody on site that was trained to oversight of these machines. There wasn't anybody on site that could administer to make sure things were operating okay. It was just kind of willy-nilly.
We did hear from an IT professional. She was here today. She was explaining a little bit about her situation, the folks she encountered, apparently owners of Dominion, giving instructions on how to run the tabulation machines for the ballots, recounting ballots many times over and over. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure, as far as these claims go. I mean, I'm sure there's more all across the entire country. This is one specific spot in Michigan where we're seeing this fraud come out. And now, who's to say that this fraud didn't happen all over, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Arizona, in Nevada?
And for years, you look at some of these races, you look at some of these politicians that are in the office, and you go, wow, how did they ever get elected? Well, we think we might know how they got elected. Hey, we do want to thank you, the viewer. If it wasn't for you, we're out here in this different phase of our country. Of course, you know us for the rallies, and we do a great job at that. And now we're more into information gathering and covering some of these Senate hearings. So please go to our website, rsbnetwork.com/donate. rsbnetwork.com/donate, because it's more imperative now that we get as many donations and funds as possible, because it takes a lot of resources to get us around this country.
And I like to say it all the time, what we're doing is absolutely 100% unprecedented. We're a grassroots media company. We don't take big money. We don't have huge donors behind us. We are completely supported by you, the viewer. And what we've been able to accomplish by doing so is absolutely incredible, and the envy of many media companies, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, and if you notice earlier, we had some demonstrators outside the window, not protesters, but supporters of what's going on here, and they were getting kind of loud with the bullhorn. They were banging on the windows at certain points. Well, what happened was the panel here made an announcement that if they did not quiet down and stop disrupting what was going on inside, they were going to basically adjourn the meeting, and that would be it for today. So we had a young lady run out there and tell them to just quiet down, that she wanted her voice to be heard. And I went outside in the hallway as she was coming in to ask her what her message was to those outside, and she said, look, I want this black woman's voice to be heard, and we're going to hear it today. She's up next in this third round of hearings here in Lansing, Michigan. And of course, we got things going on all across the country. We've got this amazing bus tour. I think we're on day 3 or 4 at this point. I forgot how many days we're on, but we'll be live on that as well, so stay tuned.
I think it's the third day.
Is it third day? Okay. It might be in North Carolina maybe, but we're all around the country, and we're trying to cover all of the events that leads up to these big dates. And Lilith, I want to bring you in real quick, because you had some key dates. There's a reason why that we're here doing this right now. There are some dates coming up on your calendar that is imperative. Time is of the essence right now.
Whoops, sorry, I'm trying to pull that up.
Well, that's fine. I caught you off guard on that.
Yeah,
but we got the electoral college on December 14th. But prior to that, I think on the 8th is an important date as far as the certification for any type of protest, I think, or any kind of dispute on this. I threw you a curveball on this. That's what happens on live television.
Keep talking, I'll find it.
Which, by the way, we appreciate everyone watching us right now. Sometimes you can get fatigued. Yesterday we had, a 7-8 hour broadcast in Arizona with those hearings, and so we appreciate everyone that was tuning in for that and sharing that broadcast, and we remain steadfast in getting the truth. We came in last night through the the first snow event in Detroit, which was incredible to experience that. So we're all around the country. We'll be back in D.C. Tomorrow to cover any developments that happened from the White House there. And of course, I saw some press conferences being scheduled as well across the country in relation to all of this investigation. I know you don't see the dates coming up, but that's fine. But it's the key. The bottom line is right now, folks, time is of the essence that we hear all of this evidence now that can build up to a case and ultimately perhaps the Supreme Court judging who's going to be the president.
Time is ticking, and with these public hearings, I mean, we're giving, an opportunity for the public to not only voice their testimonies, but for the public to also hear from one another. But we're just praying that this can settle in the court, legally the correct way, because at the end of the day, it's not up to anybody else but the legal system to cast an election. So. Absolutely.
And of course, we've heard a lot of testimony coming out of Wayne County around the Detroit area, and they said for decades it's been a very slim margin of a Democratic win. And one of the ladies up there said, well, why is 2020 any different than what we've seen before? And my suggestion was, well, maybe you've been corrupt for that long.
Yeah, that same senator who questioned that, she said, well, why, the so-called frauds, she put it in that type of phrase. She was implying to the witness who was giving a testimony, and she said, well, how can you consider that this is a fraudulent election when we had the same amount of votes in the 2016 election? And he said, well, it's fraudulent when you have this many number of dead voters voting, when you have this number of votes that are duplicated. That's how you consider this a fraudulent election.
And I think all these late mail-in votes, these ballots have just been dropped in the middle of the night. Let's think about this and put it in perspective of watching a football game. You don't see the end of the fourth quarter come about and someone says, well, let's hang on, let's stop playing, we're going to continue this 5 hours later. None of this makes sense. And I put this on social media earlier. If you just absolutely dislike this president, let's just say you do not like this president, I would rather you come out and say, I do not like this president, but I acknowledge that there's discrepancies in our voting process. There's absolutely common sense on that. So
we have seen Democrats say it. We've had registered Democrats give testimonies, and they're like, "Hey, look, I worked for the Bernie campaign, and doesn't matter where you lean. I've worked with independents, Bernie, all so and so, and this is not right." So we do have Democrats who are speaking out as well. And speaking of President Trump and how he continues to fight for us, the American people, he is having a rally this Saturday in Georgia. So let us know in the comments below if you're in the area, if you're planning to arrive. We're waiting for the logistics of that rally. We're just waiting for confirmation of the location, the time, and the place. So let us know in the comments if you're interested to come rally. And Brian, I'm going to be honest with you. I think the numbers for these rallies are going to be exponentially bigger.
Absolutely. And of course,
Much
a lot
larger.
is at stake right now in the state of Georgia, not only in the Senate, but now ultimately in the presidential race. So I would imagine that people will turn out. And a little cold, different scenario when it was this past summer in Georgia. So it's a little cold temperatures, but nevertheless, people will show up from that. We're just a few minutes away from resuming, I guess, session 3 here in Lansing. We're going on. We started 4 hours. We're going to 4 hours and 15 minutes so far. But that is about par of what you see. There's a lot of evidence. I'd probably say we've seen maybe 30 to 35 witnesses so far, with another maybe 15 witnesses to go. People that have volunteered for the first time to oversight to be an election official. We've got people who's been doing it a long time. We've been hearing things come out, procedures that were broken, norms that were not followed. And so all of this builds up to the case of what exactly happened here in the state of Michigan in terms of the election day. And we've said this before, whether or not you're for Joe Biden or Donald Trump, we want a fair election. And it seems like by hearing a lot of the evidence today, and it's sworn affidavit, these people have signed sworn affidavits on this. It's just not chat on the street, right? That we are not seeing that in this country right now, especially here in the state of Michigan.
I think Americans will grow to become more involved in the election process, whether it's a general election, a local election, a presidential election. I think more and more Americans will volunteer to work as a poll watcher to make sure that even locally that we're having a fair election, because, just hearing these things, you realize so much corruption can take place. It doesn't just wait for it to happen. at these larger scale elections. It all starts locally. Or when people say, well, how did Governor Newsom or how did Governor Cuomo even become governor? Who voted him in? Well, locally, he ran for city council. Y'all voted for him. He ran for, it's just like it's step up, step up, step up. Next thing you know, this corruption is just building up on top of each other.
And I've said that before. If you don't like what you're seeing in your hometown, I live in Texas. I live in Collin County, just north of Dallas. If I don't like what's going on in my community, I'm going to sign up and try to make a difference, whether or not on your school board, your city council. So I think it's everyone's duty right now. If you don't like what you see in politics, then take a stand for it. Don't complain about it. Do something about it, because the time is definitely now to do that. I want to bring in Philip here. Your observations, your predictions on going into session 3 here. You've heard some testimony, you've heard the emotion, you've heard the passion a lot of these people have at some point bursting out in applause for what they're hearing today.
Like I said, very contentious. Both sides are very fired up. You can definitely tell that there's some activist legislators who are sitting on this oversight committee, and I just see right now they're actually taking their seats on the bench up there,
making their way back in the
making their
building.
way back in. So we'll see. And
it's
probably here any
and
minute
it's
now.
interesting. And we've had a couple people leave, and I thought to myself, what is more important right now than talking about this election? Is it what could possibly be going on in Michigan that would trump what we're talking about today? No pun intended, but it's definitely been an interesting day so far. We appreciate you tuning in with this. Share this broadcast. We get lots of comments on this. I try to respond as much. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Brian Glenn TV, BrianGlenn TV. That's on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, the whole bit. And Philip, you got
And you can go ahead and find me at Philip Torino, and it's Philip with one L, PHILIP. TIRINO across all platforms, Parlay, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Sorry, there's so many of them. It's hard to remember them all. But yeah, you can go ahead and find us there. But most importantly, find us on
Right Side.
Also on Right Side. Our social media is at RSB Network. You can follow us on Parlay, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and find us on YouTube at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Your support is so important to us so that we can continue to mobilize across the country, bring you live event coverage, and continue to gather information as we kind of pivot how we're operating here essentially on a daily basis.
The rallies are definitely in our wheelhouse, but gathering news and doing events like this as well is what we're doing. I'm getting moments away from starting session 3. We'll see everyone's getting in place here, mask on, because it is mandate here in Michigan, and we will resume that here shortly. All right, turn it over to these guys on the floor. Thanks for watching. We'll step back in when they take another break, or perhaps this might be the last round of testimony. Now, we'll say this.
There we go.
Let's continue.
The Senate Committee on Oversight will return to order. All right, next up, I have a card for Jennifer Seidel. Jennifer? Welcome to the Senate Committee on Oversight. You have 3 minutes.
I have provided you my affidavit, and I have provided this under oath. I have a lot to go over, but I only have 3 minutes, so I'm going to be kind and try and get through it quickly. But here goes. I was actually a poll challenger for the GOP party, and I was there on Tuesday the 3rd and Wednesday the 4th. I was there on the Tuesday the 3rd from about 6:45 a.m. until about 11:30 p.m. And then I came back the next day, and I was there from about 11 a.m. until probably midnight. So I have a good overview of things that happened. I was one of the lucky ones who did not get kicked out of the room because I kept my mouth shut, as I was instructed to do. There's a vast difference between the 2 days. The first day, on Tuesday, things were, moving along. There were a lot of duplicated ballots. I was told by an election official that an entire area, about 5,000 ballots were mailed out, and they mailed out the incorrect ones, so they had to go back and duplicate all of those ballots. It was hard to get proper oversight over this. We were told to stand 6 feet away, and we were permitted on times to take a step forward. So that's 5 feet away if you have long legs like me. And about 15 seconds we could look in. So realistically, we couldn't really see much. So at one table, I saw a single ballot duplicated 4 times. I was told by the table lead that the first duplicate was because of the wrong precinct. The second was user error. The third was the wrong precinct again. I managed to see the notes in the QVF and that the incorrect ballots were listed, but the duplicate ballots were in numerical order, which I thought was weird by precinct. I estimate that I probably saw 3,000 to 4,000 duplications the first day. And the next day, it was chaotic. A poll worker, let me first say that I was assigned to and gladly took the lead of watching the military ballots. It was limited to me and one other GOP person that could stand there and monitor the table of about 17, 25, I don't know, boxes of ballots. Military ballots were unfolded and were different, and I was not permitted within 6 feet of those ballots. However, there was one lady from the NAACP and another one from the ACLU that were up wandering about, looking in the boxes with an election official, which I thought was rather odd. I saw person after person getting kicked out of the room, and it was almost like, here's a shiny object in the room over here, look at this commotion while we do this over here. And I witnessed that on several occasions. I'd also like to say that at one point I heard reports, there's 134 Republicans in the room, we can't let more in, you have enough people. But they didn't, if I may, they didn't let us know that we were to sign out. And all the people that got kicked out were not getting signed out. I witnessed probably about 30 people getting kicked out for not really doing much. Maybe they tried to challenge and weren't allowed. I saw that, and then people left for lunch because we were told that we could leave for lunch, and they weren't allowed back in the room without even being notified that they had to sign out. So them saying that there were a lot of Republicans in the room is categorically false. I counted 7 people that were helping me with the military ballots. Thank you.
Thank you. And you have submitted written testimony for...
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
This morning, yes.
Any questions, members? Senator Tice.
Sorry, when you say 7 people helping you with the military ballots, that's not 7 people total in the room, that's 7 people who were helping you right there? How many total do you think there might have been?
I saw probably a dozen. And we were trying to make sure that each stack of military ballots and their duplicate ballots were going back to the table and being followed. Those people weren't even allowed to get an elbow in, and I say that jokingly, of course, weren't even allowed to see because there were swarms of people around the table from different parties that were allowed in. And I also want to say one quick thing. Earlier, a gentleman talked about the password, the password to the QVF in the system. There was the piece of paper with the login and the password were taped to each table. And it was admin and this password taped to each table. So God and everyone could get that password. I just want to say, sorry, God.
Senator, I want to make one clarification. For those who don't know, because I know there are a lot of people who are watching on TV and maybe not everybody in the audience knows, military ballots come in a particular format that they cannot be processed with. So they have to be transcribed from the ballot that they mailed in to the ballot that's consistent with the precinct that they're at. So that's the reason why the military ballots are being so closely watched, is because everyone by necessity has to be transcribed onto a specific ballot that's different from the one that they sent. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tice.
Correct.
Senator Santana.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, we're dealing with a pandemic, right?
Of
And
course.
so part of the reason why the voting counting process was moved to the TFC Center was to make sure that people were socially distancing.
Correct.
And so, one of the protocols, and maybe you haven't heard this, but Dr. J with DHHS has also made it where we want to make sure that people are being safe based off of science. So having people maneuvering in and out of the room where ballots are being counted, do you think that it would be a good practice to make sure that you sign out if you're going to lunch? I mean, it's just like if you were going to a job every day where you work hourly work,
Right.
you would check out for lunch, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so do you think that process makes sense?
Yes, absolutely. The COVID, I understand, and it's in my testimony about the COVID orders, and we were all trying to be polite, but we were standing 6 feet away, and the other parties were at the table, even sitting down at the table with them. I witnessed this on several occasions. The Democrat challengers were sitting down at the table with them, helping them duplicate ballots, and we weren't allowed within 6 feet. So it was a little bit disparaging.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to testify today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Next up, I have Jasmine Early, and followed then by Artisha Bulmer, and then Charles Richard. Ms. Early, welcome
Thank
to the
you.
Senate Oversight Committee. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to start with I'm Hispanic from South America with a back grandmother and a Hispanic Indian native mom. I believe in one race, the human race. With that said, I can tell you that I'm not a racist. I'm a legal immigrant who is speaking here because I took my pledge to become an American citizen very seriously. I was a Republican certified poll challenger at the TCF Center from November 4th to November 5th. I was one of the victims of harassment, discrimination, and intimidation by election workers while I was fulfilling my duty as a challenger. What the witness has shared are no conspiracy theories. Several times, election workers tried to remove me from the room with the false accusations that I was impeding their process. They were the ones who blocked me from seeing the ballots, and when allowed, workers would complain. An election worker was brought up to harass me with the base of being too close. However, among themselves, they didn't social distance. I explained to him that I was only following the chairperson direction in and out. Somehow we got to the point that English was not my first language, and he implied that then I shouldn't be there. I told him that he was discriminating and that he was treating me like garbage. He went away. Later, poll workers whispered to each other and brought police officers to remove me. It was pretty intimidating having officers approaching me when I had not done anything wrong. I understood they were trying to do their job. I noticed an officer was Hispanic, and I talked to him in Spanish. They were being lied. The officer started backing up. I witnessed many Republicans being kicked out of the room, and it was scary. That is not the America I came to a few decades ago. They were mad, kicked out, and not replaced, even though they were Republicans outside to be allowed to enter. It didn't happen. Since I was not able to see the poll books and didn't have anything to compare with, I was legally advised to challenge every ballot. The workers got pretty upset about it and advised to their people not to stop the process and dismiss any challenge. I had pages of notes of ballots. Here I had an affidavit where I can prove you that I didn't see, we couldn't do anything. There were people entered with a 11900, and I took the time to check those people. They didn't allow me to challenge it. The names of the people are here. While the Democrats are dismissing the finding from challengers, is those people were alive and registered to vote, why they were manually entered. Why weren't the ballot boxes properly sealed by the workers? Several of them were unattended, and I had a list of those tables. Me and another challenger questioned why those boxes were unsealed. The election director proceeded to seal them. As an American citizen and on behalf of the people of Michigan, I'm here to demand that you remember you took an oath to defend the country from enemy, domestic and foreign. Remember, it is your moral, ethical, and lawful duty today to seek for an investigation on the chain of custody. Demand election integrity. Demand a detailed forensic audit. You can go into history as the heroes for doing something right for this country and bringing to light what is hidden, or as cowards who didn't have the courage to protect the election integrity. You will be remembered as those who took a courageous and political incorrect stand, or as dishonest people who side with the fraud. It is your choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator McDonald has a question.
Just want to say hi to Jasmine. Jasmine is a constituent of mine. How are you?
I'm good.
I don't have a question. I just want to say I'm sorry. And I'm sorry that every one of you had to go through this experience. I think it's reprehensible, and I think it's unforgivable. So thank you.
It was hate toward us. That is how I described being there. I didn't come to a country that I will be mistreated in that way. I love this country. I will stand and fight for it, but nobody, doesn't really matter. I didn't grow up seeing people by skin colors. No matter who you are, no matter where you came from, you should seek for integrity, because outside the country, we see America as an honest people, filled with honest people with integrity. I want that to be preserved, and that is why we are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for your
I will
testimony.
give you a copy of the affidavit that was given to the lawyer.
Please.
Thank you.
Next, we have Artisha Bolmer. Oh, my apologies, ma'am. Thank you.
Senator.
And then after Artisha, we have Charles Richard, and after him, Evan Schock. Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, committee. I am so happy to be here. Let me put my hat back on because this is my prize right here. This is the winner who won the election before it was cheated, before it was fraudulently cheated. It was cold and calculated fraud. And as a sidebar for Senator Santana, if Black Lives Matter, why did you skip me? Well, anyway, let me get on. Senator McBroom, sir, when I first saw your name, 2 things instantly came to my mind. One, will you sweep my testimony under the rug like the other people have done, such as Dana Nessel, who's in the fraud, check, Governor Whitmer, fraud, check, and all of the above, check. Or will you sweep me off my feet by taking my testimony as facts rather than fiction? My name is Artesia Bomber. I am an adult citizen, resident, state of Michigan, also a registered voter. I was trained and credentialed to be a poll challenger for the November 2020 general election. I witnessed many election irregularities and violations of Michigan election law, and I hope that my statement is taken seriously. I am sharing this information under the penalty of perjury that if I testify, I can be locked up if I'm telling a lie, which I am not. On November the 3rd, 2020, between 9:30 and 10 p.m., I reported to TCF Center. I was assigned to 2 separate tables, absentee voting county board, 123 and 120. I immediately noticed things were not normal. Election workers were allowed to wear Biden t-shirts, blue face masks, the ones I recognized on Gretchen Whitmer's face in some of her interviews on Charlie Langston's show. I also saw poll workers wearing Black Lives Matter face masks, which is a political movement. Joe Biden is moving to defund the police. Thank you very much. I am not passing judgment on this because I am a proud Black woman from the city of Detroit. Welcome, my sister from the D.
Please direct your comments
I
to the chair,
know
ma'am.
this because I've been strictly told not to wear anything of partisan related to my candidates for office. So election supervisors seem to be implementing a double standard. Election workers had jackets, backpacks, purses, etc. on the tables and on the floors. There was no system to check your personal effects. Some people even had coolers for food with them. I don't know what was in them. It could have been ballots for all I know. I observed an election worker pull out a ballot from an envelope where the circle was completed next to the name Donald J. Trump. I saw this with my own eyes, all this that I'm saying to you today. I could see this because the marking was at the very top left corner of the ballot. Instead of processing the ballot, I saw the election worker push the ballot back in the envelope and put it in there in a black container on top of the table. I witnessed a meeting between election workers, team leads, where they gathered together and spoke at meetings that was in the left far-hand side of the wall. The meeting ended in cheers. Woo! They were just super excited. At approximately 11:43 p.m., I heard one of the team leads yell, "This is our house tonight," and further yell, "They gonna do what we tell them to do from here on out." I took that as they're saying, this is the Democrats' house tonight, and the Republicans, independent, or whoever is going to do what we say tonight. And might I add, I was a U.S. Taxpayer Party of Michigan candidate at that time, sir. I observed stations where election workers were working on scanned ballots that had issues that needed to be manually corrected. I believe some of these workers were changing votes that had been cast for Donald Trump other than Republican candidates. I observed ballots with cursive writing notes at the top right-hand corner. I observed a lot of them. Let's say maybe about 100 of them or more. I also observed these ballots did not have ballot codes on them. The one, you tear at the top, no ballot code numbers. At approximately 4:03 a.m., a poll worker announced, 50 boxes of ballots coming in. Election workers loudly cheered, woo! Why? Did they know that they were for Biden? Was it a Biden dump? We don't know, huh? About 4:50 a.m., I witnessed a man spraying a chemical inside the ballot. It could have been air, but I also saw him put whiteout tape up inside of there, and he was walking around with this whiteout tape during the whole night. I have witnesses. If you need to call on them, their name is Cheryl Constantino, Linda Sawyer, Judy Jump, Debbie Swaff, and Marlene Benser, including myself, our TC bomber. I can't get all into this because I probably got a few more seconds, but let me tell you, it was voter fraud at its finest, pure and calculated fraud. And I wouldn't be surprised if people up here was involved. But this young man right here, Senator McDaniel, Donald, I got to give you kudos. I see you're interested in this. And Senator Thies, I have to give you kudos because I see you're really paying attention. I wish Senator Lucido was here because I say he's paying attention. And now I think you will pay attention. And I plead the blood of Jesus over this fraud. And that everybody that was part of it and know about it will be convicted in their soul and their spirit. They won't sleep, they won't eat until they come right. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. Questions from
Any questions?
Questions from Senator Santana.
Y'all, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Ms. Bomber,
Oh,
for
you're
your
welcome.
testimony. You mentioned in your statements that you were also a candidate for the U.S. 13th Congressional District at the time that you were a challenger. Do you realize that you cannot do both of those acts at the same time?
Well, that's a double standard because y'all committed fraud and y'all wasn't supposed to do that at the same time as well. Next. I still witnessed it. My eyes still witnessed it.
Any other questions
Any other
from members?
questions?
Senator Tice?
I just want to make sure we get a copy of your testimony.
Sure, but it won't be done today because I'm going to amend it. So if you guys have anything with the word RTC bomber on it, dispose of it because it will be amended and that won't be withdrawn. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're done? Thank you. You all have a wonderful day. And all who involved will not rest.
Next, we have Charles Richard.
It's actually Charles Richard.
Oh, my apologies,
That's okay.
sir.
No, that's quite all right.
After Mr. Richard, I have Evan Schock, followed by Adam DeAngeli.
Ready?
Sir,
All
yes,
right.
you have 3
well,
minutes.
First of all,
Thank you.
thank you for having me. I'm not your normal person in terms of protester or otherwise. I'm a former vice president of quality in aerospace. And when I hear numbers bannered around, I got to tell you, if I accepted those numbers as even though they're improvement on aerospace, on aircraft, you would be dying. The planes would be dropping out of the sky. It's deplorable to hear things like what the numbers were in 2016 and what they are in 2020. So when I hear this, so I'm going to go into my speech. I'm sorry, but it really does. I just can't believe that we talk about well, it's okay, it's acceptable. So anyways, let me go on. My name is Charles Richard, and I'm the chairman of the Oceana County Board of Canvassers, and I'm one of the plaintiffs in the suit with Sidney Powell. And I'll make that emphasis. That suit is very valid, and we're going forward. And you guys will be involved in it, too, before long, I guarantee you. So I say that because we have got to clean up what is going on in the election process. When I hear Senator Lucido say, well, we're just lawmakers, wrong. You guys chartered it. You chartered the Board of Canvassers. You go back and look at MCL 168. You guys chartered it. It's a 113-page manual, too. So I can tell you specifically on that. I've heard a lot of things about it. I've heard about clerks testifying. Those clerks know it up to this process. They know that part. But after that, no, they don't. The tabulators, this stuff, very few do. It's too technical. But let me tell you about one piece of evidence you don't know. The Secretary of State contracted with a company called VoterWorks. They use a software called Arlo. Arlo is an open architecture. You ought to look at that. That's a serious flaw. It's a back way into the QVF, the qualified voter file. What does that do? It allows them to enter names that may be fictitious. Well, I've seen examples of places where these people don't live and whatnot. Take a look at it. That's pretty serious flaw. It's like your bank or your credit card being open. No one's looking at that. How did we find it? We found it by preparing for the Board of Canvassers last week. I happened to discover it by looking at the audit file, the risk. The state calls it a risk-limiting audit pilot system. It's a joke. I want to tell you that. It's a joke. How do I know that? I'm an auditor. I'm a systems auditor, not a computer systems auditor, a quality systems auditor, where we can tear things apart and understand what the documentation is, what you use as a standard. When you talk about an audit, what are you auditing to? What standard are you auditing to? So when I say that, so that's a joke. And that
1 minute, sir.
Actually, that open hole there is like your credit card being breached, and that's what it is. It is a distinct breach, and it's there. We need to really focus on that. And another thing is, I heard a thing about the Black Lives Matter and Jesus. We had an incident in our poll. Well, a lady had a Trust Jesus shirt on. They would not let her be in the poll. She was a poll worker. They stopped. They told her it's it's a code, dress code issue, or it's an issue. She went to five different people, including this state. So I didn't accept it. I went to the FBI, and I heard Pete Lucido say that. The FBI is a joke, and I want to tell you that right now, and I can validate it. So I want to finish with this. It's a joke because they don't go that far. I backed the guy into the corner, really, and then I talked to him again. He says, what do? Are we going to go after a $5 case, or are we going to go after a $10 million case? And you know what I said to him? I said, both. You know why? Because that's selective enforcement if you don't. I've been on city council. I can tell you that. If you do that, you are subjugating freedom. You're basically just going after money. So let me finish with one thing if I can, then I'll give you my notes. It'll be quick. I said, finally, you have a job to do under U.S. Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, Clauses 2 and 3. That states, and I'll paraphrase, the legislature will pick a number of electors equal to the number of senators and representatives in Michigan's case. We expect that with all the fraud going on in this state, that you would do your duty and elect the electors as described in the U.S. Constitution and rule this election null and void. Be a leader, not a wuss. Void the vote, elect electors. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, sir. We have questions from members?
I do just, so you said thank you, sorry. VoterWorks, and then you gave another name, but I didn't.
Arlo is the software that they use, yes. But if you go on, if I can, let me give you just a little bit addition on there. On their website, and I didn't tell you this because we ran out of time, it's an item 3, it states, add voter information for voter request. They're given a procedure, okay, just so you know that. So it states, add voter information for voters requesting ballots. This can be done manually and does not require a voter registration system integration. In other words, it can bypass the verification steps. Who would ever approve an open system like that? It's a major flaw.
And that's Arlo?
Pardon me?
That part is Arlo?
That's right off.
That's
in VoterWorks. That's what that's a claim to fame. Pull it up and look at it. It's like I almost died when I found it.
Thank you.
So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Senator.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Richard.
Yeah. I'll give you these if you want.
Please.
I didn't put my phone there.
Yes, thank you. Next, we have Mr. Evan Schock, followed by Adam DeAngeli. And after him, I have card for Karen Chopshian, I believe. Mr. Schock, welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee.
Hi, thank you for your time. I'm a registered voter in Michigan, and I was an independent challenger at the TCF Center on November 4th, 2020. So I arrived around the time when the windows were being boarded up with cardboard boxes and signs and stuff like that. And when I walked in, I was confused on why they weren't letting challengers in and why these boards were being put up. And the people around me were also confused, so we decided to ask questions. Nobody around us could give us an answer. We were ignored, and people were walking in and out. We had no clue how these people were being let in and out. There was really nobody constituting it correctly. So after about an hour of waiting, I was an independent, so I had somebody come up to me and ask me, hey, are you an independent? I said yes, and I was let in. It was me and about 8 other people. Once I got in, I signed in, and I noticed right away that it was very chaotic in there. There was groups of people in the middle where somebody testified earlier and said there's empty ballots in the middle of the room. There were groups around those empty ballots where it'd be easy for somebody to grab these ballots, hide them, or take them somewhere without being seen. I noticed a commotion in the back right corner, so I decided to go over and see what was going on. And another independent challenger, I asked him what happened. He told me, from what I saw too, because I followed the police over there, he was being told to stay back. There were more than, I'd say, about 9 people around this table. And there's just a lot of commotion going on. He said that he was told he had to leave as an independent challenger, and they wanted a new challenger in. So I felt that was wrong. And as I was walking later, I saw a woman named Karen, who she's going to be speaking soon. She was raising her voice, so I went over and asked her if there was an independent challenger at her table, which she said no. And they were blocking her view from seeing the ballots. So I offered to tell her what I'm seeing when they're duplicating these ballots, because she was in fear that she would be kicked out if she spoke up and challenged any more than she did. With these manual ballots, after we watched the duplication process go on, they brought more ballots over, and we watched them scan the ballots and put in the date 1/1/1900. I was actually with the Democratic challenger too. We were both confused on why this was happening, so we decided to call over a supervisor, who the only response we got was, "Oh, that's the default date that we put." I didn't ask any other questions, neither did he. Didn't ask any questions in the fear that I'd be kicked out, as I just witnessed 4 other Republicans/independents get kicked out. And it was interesting because in the guide, or in the handbook, it does say that no propaganda is allowed inside of the polling center. And I did see Black Lives Matter masks. And again, I feel there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like that's a double standard, and I feel that it's wrong that people can have that, and it's okay. I was called names whenever my mask fell down even a little below my nose. I'd be called names. I'd say I was killing people, stuff like that, while they'd be talking to somebody not wearing a mask. People at the polling centers weren't wearing masks, the people who were doing the duplicating. It was just very unorganized. Yeah, that's all I've got.
All right, thank you. Any questions from members? Thank you very much for taking the time to testify.
Yeah, thank you.
Was that Mr. Schock? Or, yes, okay. We want to card off here? This is the next, we haven't had her yet. That was the name I was struggling with. This is one we just did, so you want to change the number on it. All right, thank you. Next, we have Adam DeAngeli. On deck will be Karen Chopchian, followed by Randy Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for this opportunity. My name is Adam DeAngeli, and I was a poll worker in the election for the city of Detroit, not a poll challenger, but a poll worker as an employee working at a polling place as a ballot box inspector on election day, November 3rd. I think I'm only the second person today who was a poll worker, so I can answer the question I think you may all have about why so many poll challengers were impeded. I took not 1 but 2 poll worker trainings for the city of Detroit, one for ballot inspector on October 14th and one for electronic poll book inspector on October 15th. And in both of those trainings, it was emphasized to the students in the classroom that the social distancing requirements could be used to impede poll challengers. In fact, both trainings emphasized that if poll workers got angry about it, we should call the police on them as a first resort. In fact, at the second training, we had a trainee, as they were explaining the social distancing rule, they said they have to wear a mask, they have to stay 6 feet back, and that's important because they can come behind your table, but if they don't have 6 feet behind your table, they can't come back there. So a trainee asks, so if they're 6 feet back, they can't actually see. And the trainer says, exactly, not unless they've got really good vision or they brought their binoculars. And later on, another trainee asked, what if they get really mad and they're yelling? The trainer responded, quote, 911, call the police on them, have them thrown up out of there. Knowing from these trainings that the city was setting up a confrontational setting in which poll challengers would be completely unable to perform their duties, I told others what I had been told, and I provided the audio that I had recorded of the poll worker trainings. This led to a lawsuit against the Secretary of State filed on Friday, October 23rd. The plaintiffs in that lawsuit, one was a gentleman testifying earlier this afternoon, and another will be your colleague in the House next year. There was a hearing on the suit, and resolution was reached in the morning of Wednesday, October 28th, 6 days before Election Day. That hearing is online at the Court of Claims YouTube page. You can watch it. It concluded with the Secretary of State agreeing to amend the policy to say that poll challengers would socially distance except as necessary to perform their duties. And critically, Judge Cynthia Stevens said, quote, "I am more concerned that you get this directive out and amend the frequently asked questions for election workers than I am about this court's docket." Judge Stevens understood how time-sensitive and important this was. Both the hearing and the final order specified that this revised policy was to be made known to poll workers. I can tell you, as a poll worker in the city of Detroit on Election Day, nobody there was advised of this policy change. And in fact, the poll challengers were sitting at the end of our cafeteria table all the way at the end the entire day. Now, you might ask why I didn't tell the challengers myself about the policy, and the answer was because they're for the other side, which leads to another important point that I think you might have some questions about, which is how it is that so many of the poll workers were not real Republicans. Well, at both of the poll worker trainings I attended, they had made the point of announcing that the electronic poll book inspectors included many teenagers. And in fact, at the EPI training I took on October 15th, a clear majority of people in the room were in fact teenagers. So for all the people that came up today that said they applied to be a poll worker but didn't get the job, there was something going on that was coordinating the hiring of employees for a certain purpose. Now you'll know, or maybe you don't know, but I assume you do, poll workers are required to specify their party affiliation. They can't say they're independents. Well, what's your party affiliation when you're a minor and you're not even eligible to vote? So I thought that was an important thing. There's a lot more in my affidavit about what I saw happen on Election Day. For example, we were instructed at the training that provisional ballots were used to mislead ineligible voters as essentially phony ballots that would be destroyed by the Department of Elections. It's all in the affidavit and also linked to the recording of the complete poll worker trainings from start to finish. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. DeAngeli. So they told you, you're saying at the training, that they specifically stated that it was intentional to make it difficult for challengers?
Yeah, they actually had a laugh about it. They said, and again, I'm quoting from the recording, which you can listen yourself, but they asked, so if they're 60 feet back, they can't actually see. The trainer interrupts. Exactly. Not unless they got really good vision or they brought their binoculars.
Okay. Other members have questions? Mr. DeAngeli, you've submitted a very substantial amount of additional testimony, so thank you for that, and thank you for keeping it to 3 minutes now. Appreciate that, but we'll look through the longer testimony.
Very good. Thank you.
Next, I have Karen Chopchian, followed by Randy Bishop, and then Lenore Kurek. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name.
It's Chopchin. It's fine.
How do you say it?
Karen Chopchin.
Chochin?
Chopchin.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Is that going to destroy my seconds?
No.
Thank
That's
you.
Starting now.
Okay, first off, I'd like to say my affidavit was sent to Washington and stamped, and by a lawyer that worked for Senator John Kennedy. I'm going to make a long story short because a lot of this is repetitious, and I do see a few faces that I do know. And yes, there was a trough of blank ballots in the center for all the world to see, and welcome to take as many as you wanted, especially after hours. I am an administrator. I've done it for many, many years. I've done fraud at banks, embezzlements, and I've never seen administrative procedure so chaotic. It was a circus in there. They were banging on the doors. I didn't know if I was going to go under the table or leave the building. I could not do my job. So if you expected me to do it, I couldn't. It wasn't flowing right. And one example of me not being able to do my job were the military votes. Military votes I was unable to see at all. The first one, forget it. They wouldn't even let me do it because they said, we're starting and you're going to slow down the process, so we're not going to show it to you. So that was the end of that. And I was like, at the top of my voice, I needed help. Nobody was helping me except young gentleman, a couple young gentlemen, but specifically Evan Schock. He was an independent, and he came in there to help me because they would not allow me to see the ballots. They were 6 inches apart. I was supposed to stay 6 feet. Was that the law? Well, that's the way it works in there. So he had to help me. He had to like rubberneck himself and tell me what each ballot said. 2.5 hours for 19 ballots. And the computer screen was at the opposite end of the table. So everything was very awkward. And these ballots, some of these ballots were opened and stapled shut. So I don't see any administrative sensibility about this since I've done paperwork all my life. I don't know the internal organs of the computer, but I did see 1900 a lot too at that military table after those were counted. So there was plenty of those. Yes, do you have something to say?
No, you have 1 minute remaining.
Oh, 1 minute? Okay. So let me just reiterate. Okay, some envelopes were opened and then stapled shut. Poll workers received select few would not allow me to see the first ballot. Yes. Okay. So long story short, since this is in Washington and since it is a little bit repetitious, the bottom line is I was not able to do my job because of harassment, and we had a parade of Black Lives Matter in rhinestones. I was told not to wear anything. In fact, I'm wearing what I wore today at TCF. So I did not see anything Trump, but I saw a lot of masks that said BLM, rhinestones. Don't forget the rhinestones. But as an administrator, I could not do my job, period. So there wasn't a lot I could do in all that confusion. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And one comment I'd like to make. My husband almost did, he said, why are you going over there? They're not going to do anything. I said, you know what? I'll go. I'm going to go because I won't be able to sleep at night knowing that I didn't do something. But I'd just like to say that.
Thank you. Do any members have questions?
Really quickly, you
Senator
kept
Tice?
saying you couldn't do your job. What specifically was your title?
I was a poll watcher.
Okay, thank you.
And I couldn't watch the ballots being counted.
Thank you.
Any
Were
other
you a challenger or a watcher?
I was a watcher.
Okay.
I was a watcher. I watched everything, and I was told to be a watcher. I don't know a challenger. I guess I was a challenger, but I was trying to believe that I was a watcher. I was watching everything. I was watching.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I challenged, and I lost, and Evan had to help me. I mean, I'm a pretty, I'm capable of taking care of myself, and I don't know why a young man has to help me and assist me in reading the ballots. That's ridiculous. It was all ridiculous. I would invalidate the whole room because that's how ridiculous it was. So that's all I have to say. I'm just,
Thank you
I'm
for your
just
testimony.
disappointed. Okay.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me.
Next, I have Randy Bishop, followed by Lenore Couric, and then David, I think it says Clitby from White Lake, so I hope I pronounced that correctly. Mr. Bishop, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you, Ed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. McBroom, and fellow senators. I appreciate the opportunity to address you today. I'd like to do so by swearing myself in. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Unfortunately, I was here on November the 19th at the joint session between the House and the Senate. And the three clerks that I saw give their personal opinions were not sworn in. And in my opinion, they did not give testimony. One of those clerks is my very own clerk, Cheryl Guy. I live in Antrim County. Bill Bailey's a personal friend of mine, and I'm very familiar with what's going on in Judge Elsenheimer's courtroom on Thursday. We have a problem. As I do my radio show every day, I talk and interact with people all over the state of Michigan through my website and the TuneIn app. The problem we have is that we, the people, don't have faith in what happened in our state. You've heard all the testimony here today. I totally concur. As a poll challenger for the first time in my life of 62 years. I drove down to the roof of TCF Center. I call it Cobo Hall. Patrick Kobeck approached me and said, you need to come see this. I own a radio station. I'm very familiar with the internet, Ethernet cables, routers, and modems. Every single tabulator in that long table was connected to a computer. That computer was connected to the internet via Ethernet cables. We tracked it down. Long extensions of Ethernet cables was piled up to hide what we got down on our knees and found, which was a high-speed commercial router. We saw it with our own eyes. Many people can verify this. Patrick Kobeck went to Christopher Thomas and a Mr. Nathan and a Mr. Baxter, election officials in Detroit. We asked them, as I was witnessing the conversation, are those connected to the internet? No. You have to trust us. I'm willing to take a lie detector test. I know Mr. Kobeck will, and many others that you've heard from today. My question to you, will Chris Thomas, Mr. Nathan, and Mr. Baxter do the same? We want a full forensic audit in Wayne, Macomb, Oakland, Kent County, and Antrim County before you guys can certify this election, because it has not been truly certified based on the fraudulent activities that took place in this state. And before you vote, I wish somebody would reach out to leadership and tell them to please stop saying we haven't seen any evidence to overturn the election yet. We have. Please do not send any electors to the Electoral College on December 14th until those full forensic accountings are done in Wayne, Macomb, Oakland, Kent, and Antrim counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
I will take your questions under oath.
Thank you. And members of the audience, I just beg you again, please, to try to restrain yourself, because I still have a very big pile of cards, and I know a lot of you are waiting. So any questions from members? No. Thank you so much
I
for
drove
being
all
here.
the way down here. I'd love to answer a question.
Senator McDonald.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Randy, at the end of the day, who are we ultimately going to find responsible? I don't want to make this political, Democrat, Republican. Who are we going to find responsible for this, in your mind, your opinion?
One thing I think that would solve the problem, and I would really love to heal not only the nation, but especially the state, I would love to see candidate, former Vice President Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Jocelyn Benson, to agree to our request. We won't accept Biden and Harris as our president and vice president until we're given proof that nothing was illegally done in this election. If you go through a forensic accounting of Wayne, Macomb, Oakland, Kent, and my Antrim County, show us the facts. We want to see the ballots. We want to see the poll books. We want to see the cables, the tabulators. We want to see it all. And if you prove to us, Mr. Biden, with all due respect, we'll accept you as our president. We will accept you as our senators and our state representatives to heal this state and to heal this country. I have not lived for 62 years with kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids to see this election stolen, which is what we believe. Prove us wrong. All you have to do is that auditing of the books, the ballots, in full disclosure with a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, Jocelyn Benson, Governor Whitmer, Mr. Biden in the room. If you do that, the truth will be shown and our land will be healed. But until you do it, we're not going to buy it. The Democrats say, hey, shut up. It's been certified. No, it hasn't. I don't believe Wayne County has truly been certified. With what Monica Palmer and William Hartman went through, they never certified Oakland County. How could the Board of Canvassers certify the state when you don't have all 83 counties certified? They said it was. No, it wasn't. There's laws on the books. I understand the election law. You're going to be held accountable that if you don't send electors or you send the Republican electors, you broke the law. No, I say you responded to a higher law. You responded and appealed to God, and you did the right thing in your own morals and your values and the principles for the people of this state and for our country. And if you don't, God help us.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Next, I have Lenore Couric, followed by David Clitby, and then Linda Sawyer. Is Lenore Couric here? Lenore? Is Lenore here? If she did submit written testimony, and we'll take that. Is David here? After David would be Linda Sawyer, followed by Holly Spalding.
Thank you, Senator. It's David Clixby, by the way.
It is an X.
Yes,
Okay.
it's an X.
That was an option I considered. Please welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
Thanks. My name is Dave Clixby. I'm from Oakland County. I was a poll challenger both in this last election as well as the August primaries. I'm just here today to tell you what I saw and request that you do something about what I view as a somewhat fraudulent election. I was there on Tuesday from 6:30 in the morning till when they stopped the count, and that's the thing that nobody's talked about today. Is things are going very smoothly, and suddenly at 8 o'clock ish, the gentleman on the kiosk said, "Okay, that's it. You can go home. Stop counting." And they had a stack of ballots, a couple hundred. Things were very slow in the afternoon. Things come in, you have some work, and then you don't have any work for hours. The poll workers did their job. They had to be sitting at their table more than the poll challengers, and then we could have more mobility than they could. But when everything stopped, it was like a sudden shock wave through the room, and people didn't, because they were scheduled from 6:30 in the morning till 10 at night. So suddenly they get to go home early, and that's pretty much what I thought. It's like, it's over. It's not fun doing what we were doing in Cobo Hall for 12 hours a day. But the point, the benchmark of the numbers, when Mr. Baxter, I'm not sure if it was Baxter or the head honcho on the kiosk said the total numbers of the ballots that we counted today up till now was 107,000 ballots. Everybody clapped. It was an acknowledgement of a job well done. 1 minute. So the point is, and then pretty much everybody left. My questioning is, what happened on the midnight shift? Because I came back in at 10:30 in the morning. I was called up and they wanted more help. And at 10:30 in the morning, when I walked into that room, it was like quiet. The dust had settled. It was just kind of a quiet, silent room that was just maybe waking up, but it was still pretty quiet and sleepy in there. So how is it that if they brought in 40,000 votes at 4 o'clock, that they would get all of them done by 10:30? It just doesn't, something about that doesn't make sense to me, and I don't trust that this election was fair and on the up and up. And what are you guys going to do about it? You know, I know you can hear it all, but if we're not going to take action on a definite fraud to the system, if you're just going to kick it down the road and worry about it tomorrow, and maybe this is something that we can correct the next time around, you've missed an opportunity to stop what's going on. I believe.
Thank you, sir.
I believe there was fraud in this election.
Thank you. Mr. Clixby, any questions from members? Senator Santana.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. I just got one question. Did you trust
Sure.
the election back in 2016 when Trump won and Hillary Clinton lost Detroit by 10,000 votes?
What was did I what the election?
Did you trust the outcome of the election in 2016 when Hillary Clinton lost Detroit by 10,000 votes?
Not particularly, because if I remember right, Detroit was, it took them weeks to verify the election, and I just know that it didn't look, Detroit did not look good in the public eye for just being organized, and there was just a lot of funny business going on then too. So no, I didn't particularly trust it then.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Clixby. Next, we have Linda Sawyer, followed by Holly Spalding, and then Kurt Hauser.
Hello, greetings.
Hello,
My name
welcome
is
to the
Linda
Senate Oversight
Sawyer.
Committee.
Hi. And I volunteered as a poll challenger. I am also a registered nurse, and I'll tell you why I'm going to throw that one in. I am from Detroit. I'm from District 6. We have some thick skins where I'm from. And I volunteered the night of the election. So I was the 10 at night to the 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. shift. Definitely a hostile environment when I walked in. I did not expect to see what I saw. And part of the hostility was definitely COVID. They used that as an excuse from the minute we walked in. And it was also an excuse to throw people out. You could have had your mask below your nose, and it was an excuse to throw you out. And the reason I put that in as a nurse is we all know that COVID is spread by droplet. The reason we wear our masks is so that we don't sneeze on people. We know that a sneeze or a cough can spread 6 feet. So we wear a mask so that we don't spread it. So if it's below your nose, it doesn't matter if you're breathing. They use that as an excuse to throw people out. And the whole irony of it is you had to stay 6 feet away from people so that we were forced not to see the ballots. But at the end of the day, when it was time to go home, they had us leave at the end of the room, and it was by escalator. So if you can imagine just a herd of cattle going up the escalator on the way out, that was okay. You could all smash in like a herd of cattle on the way out, and it was fine. So if you were trying to keep people safe, it did not matter at the end of the day. But as you were watching ballots, it made a difference. They kept us away from the ballots on purpose. They used COVID to throw us out. And at the end of the day, didn't matter. You could all smash in and leave the building okay. It was fine. So they used COVID as an excuse. And as a nurse, I found that despicable, totally despicable. They used it to keep me from my monitor, told me I had to stay 6 feet away, but yet the supervisor stood between me and the monitor. So I'm going to flash forward to 2 o'clock in the morning. At midnight, Trump was ahead 10%, which was an unusually high amount. To about 2 o'clock in the morning, my monitor went down. It totally rebooted. So unless you can tell me there wasn't a data dump, there wasn't a data breach, I don't believe that the numbers were true, because when I went home and woke up, all of a sudden Biden was ahead. We had processed 120,000 votes by midnight out of the 170,000 absentee ballots we were expecting. So I assumed we were missing about 50,000, and all of a sudden Biden was now missing. And Sidney Powell did discuss something about this in Rudy Giuliani's press conference, and I do believe I did witness that. And the voting had stopped in the middle of the night. So unless you were one of the few processing tables, you would not have seen this rebooting of the laptops.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Sawyer? Senator Tice.
Sorry, there's a theme here. When you were watching people get thrown out, did you know whether or not they were Republican or Democrat as they were getting booted
It
out?
depends if they clapped or not. anytime they clapped, you knew that was a Republican. And I had never heard of anyone that wasn't a Republican getting thrown out.
That was my next question. So you're not aware of anybody that didn't have Republican credentials getting?
No, but you could tell us. Our credentials were huge. Any other person just said election challenger in a very small tag, and we had bright yellow wristbands on. So you could tell who we were. We had obstructors too. So I've got more in my affidavit. I just didn't want to be redundant. So I did see election irregularities at my particular table, including non-processing of ballots. There was a certain process that the table went around. So I saw ballots not being processed, just taken out and put back in and stacked up. So they weren't even sent to the tabulator to be processed. This could have been hundreds of ballots. This could have been from a Trump precinct. And Artesia Bomber, who testified earlier, we were at that same table intermittently. She saw it was a Trump ballot. She testified that she saw it being put back in. In my affidavit, these were the tens of ballots that I saw being stacked back up and not tabulated.
Thank you.
Any
Thank you very
other
much,
questions?
No, seems to be all. Now, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Holly Spalding. Following her would be Kurt Hausower, and after that, Timothy Parker.
Hi.
Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I have 19 things in my affidavit, 19 items of things that I saw. I was at the TCF Center on the evening of November 3rd, election night from 10 p.m. till 5 a.m. I was the observer for Precinct 29. Shout out to the ladies at Precinct 29. They were awesome. I gotta say, I did not experience the same kind of hostility that a lot of people did. I was able to talk to the workers before someone told them they weren't allowed to talk to me, and I wasn't allowed to talk to them. A lot of them, this was their first time ever doing this. There was one lady that was there for 30 years. She's been doing it. So I observed a spoiled ballot that came to the table that should have been stopped at the clerk's office. It was put in the problem bin correctly by the supervisor, but that should have never came. The next is they weren't following procedures. So the procedure was that the first person scanned the ballot, it would go to the next person would take out the ballot, read off the ballot number, and confirm that with the first person that scanned it in, and they were not doing that. I asked them why they weren't doing that, and they said they weren't doing that this year. So that's what they told me. I watched ballots that were had the wrong number, that didn't match, the inside ballot did not match the outside of the envelope number. So the second person was verifying it with herself. She wasn't verifying it with the first person. So she noticed that, she said that to the supervisor, that they didn't match. So what they would do is they took white Post-it tape, they put it on the outside of the envelope, and they wrote down the number of the inside ballot number on the outside of the envelope. I witnessed that at least 3 times. And once the girl realized what the process was, she stopped mentioning it. She just knew what to do. Then there was, I did notice the Democrats that came in. They came in 2 different groups throughout the evening. There was 2 groups, and they weren't there to watch the process. They were there to watch us. They were standing behind me. I was 6 feet away from the table. They were behind me. They weren't watching what was going on. And at one point, I had 2 girls with their phones up, like they were recording me. I offered them my notes. I said, this is what I've observed. This is what they're doing. They're doing everything, you know, they're catching these things. There were also, I observed torn, stained any ballots that needed to be duplicated. They were not duplicated. The supervisor asked her supervisor, which is the people with the embroidered shirts, she asked them what they should do. And that supervisor told her to run them through the tabulator and only duplicate them if it was rejected. So anything that had a smudge, a stain, a tear, and I did witness a few of them. At some point, they stopped telling the supervisor that there was an issue with a ballot because they knew they were going to run it through anyway. Didn't matter.
Thank you. So earlier in your testimony, you mentioned running the ballots through the machine and then tearing the numbers off. Were they tabulating them first and then removing the number?
No. So the first person would scan it into the e-poll book. And then he would give it to the second person. The second person was supposed to take out the ballot because the first person never saw the ballot.
Right. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. That's when you said scanned the ballot in. I assumed you were talking about putting it in the tabulator. I understand now what you're referencing. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions from members? Okay. Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
testimony. Next, I have Kurt Hausauer, followed by Timothy Parker, and followed by Bill Schmidt. Is Kurt here? Kurt? Is Timothy here? Timothy Parker? Timothy Parker? And I'm putting these back into the pile, so I mean, if they miss their time now, they'll get another chance. Bill Schmidt. Is Bill Schmidt here? Robin Bozinski. It's a pretty similar name to a lot of the ones we have in the UP, so welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I do first of all want to say that we live in a republic with a democracy. I already gave you my written testimony as
yes.
well as my affidavit.
Yes.
What I'm going to tell you just a couple things that are in my sworn statement is I was a challenger down at TCF, and I did experience a lot of things of what people are saying. There was intimidation. There was the cock blocking of us being able to see the actual process where they wanted us to stand at the corner monitor. And the one most egregious thing that I noticed was it alerted me that the table person who was in charge of our table had told seat number 5 to hang on to 9 ballots because they needed to bring them back to change some numbers on them. So I'm like, oh wait, red flag in my head. So I thought, well, I need to go over by the scanner and see what they're doing over there. And I did, and after a little bit, and I was harassed about my mask because I could only wear it up to my nose because I need to be able to breathe, and I had ADA. And anyway, so what I had witnessed was this gentleman scanning the envelope. He raised it up, calling for the table person in charge of our table to come, and he says, what am I supposed to do with this when the ballot number does not match in the book? And he said, well, we're just going to change it. And I said, you cannot change that. You cannot go in the poll book and change it. We need to challenge this. Well, when I did that, summing everything up, I was pulled aside about my mask. The woman and I had agreed that if you get me a shield, I will wear a shield with my mask. I'm good, you know. And I thought that was settled. And while she was talking to me, I could hear the gentleman tell the scanner guy, just scan them and run them through. It's not our job to double check the numbers like this.
1 minute.
So that was the most egregious thing that I had experienced. You'll see the rest of my thing. But days later, my neighbor was walking her dogs. And so I went over in my jammies and I talking to her, and she says, Robin, I want to tell you something. You're political, and I think I need to tell you something. So what she had told me was she works at the local nursing home, and she had gone back to work after being off all summer, and one of the RNs had told her that the activities director held a activity in the building with the seniors, and it was a mock election. It was a mock election with real ballots, and that they were, the staff workers were helping the seniors fill these ballots out, to the point that one gentleman was writing his name as Quincy, but that wasn't his name because he had Alzheimer's. So the worker actually crossed his name out and wrote on his thing, and was told that the ballots were in fact mailed out. So that's a point that I think nobody knows about or has heard about. I've asked them to come and testify, but they said that they're worried about their jobs.
And we'll need, if that issue is going to be looked into, we'll need something, your testimony would constitute hearsay.
I actually have my stuff in writing, and I've given you all and I've given the facility's name, address, and all that information to you.
Thank you. Any other members have questions?
I do want to remind you, though, that your job is to thoroughly, whether you're Democrat or Republican, we have an ethical, moral, civic duty to make sure that this election is truly an legal process. And to me, it seems like a lot of infringements and a lot of infractions, a lot of illegal behavior towards people trying to do their legal jobs were in fact violated.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. I need to apologize for Senator Tice, who had to step out for another committee, and will come back as soon as she can. And
so one thing I do want to tell you
Senator
about.
Santana does too, so thank you. We'll keep rolling.
What I want to tell you about is one of the envelopes that came through was the tab was tacked behind the envelope like this, and the ballot was showing like this, and I said, you can't process that. That is not a legal sealed envelope, and I got fought about that.
Were you successful or unsuccessful in challenging
that? Every time I challenged them, which was about 6 times, at seat number 1's thing, they just wanted to put a Post-it on it, and we'll look back at it later. It's not our job to worry about that. And I'm like, well, wait a minute here. And then the gentleman was opening the envelopes, he hit the ballot. Now remember, we do not know if these are Democratic or Republican votes. We just know that we're looking at an envelope that is legal or legally sealed or not sealed. And whenever I tried to challenge it, he put a Post-it on, orange one.
Okay, thank you.
So, just to tell you. Thank you for having me.
Next, we have a card for Bill Schmidt, followed by Matthew Shepard, followed by Maria Menzel-Brown. Mr. Schmidt, welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee, sir.
Thank you, Senator Broom.
You have
all the senators.
You have 3 minutes.
My name is Bill Schmidt. I'm a registered voter here in the state, and I was at the TCF Center. There was a lot of confusion. You've heard a lot of testimony about the confusion. And I have to say probably a good part of that confusion is really at your doorstep. And by that being leading up to this election, we knew that there were going to be problems. And Ruth Johnson begged you guys to give the county clerks, city clerks, more time. You didn't. That's a huge chunk of this. Because anytime when there is confusion, there's always doubt. And that's what we're facing now. Likewise, there was a lot of ignorance in the room. Ignorance as to what constitutes a legitimate ballot. What is a signature supposed to be all about? How the entire process goes by. If you're predisposed to see fraud, you will see fraud in just simple mistakes. Mary Smith and Fred Jackson live at the same address. They fill out their ballots. They put them in separate envelopes, the incorrect envelopes. So you have the mismatched ballot with the number, and all this is readily explainable. Unless you want to see fraud, then these are illegal ballots. So part of this problem is just human error. Part of the problem is the folks just didn't have enough time. Part of the problem is a scourge pandemic. From
1 minute.
From my point of view, I saw a lot of poll workers work really hard. And I think there were some hard feelings on part of many of the challengers. There was a lot of sharp elbows, and people got their feelings hurt. And I think that's what we're seeing here today. Hurt feelings. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Do you were in the room, I believe, a little while ago when we had a gentleman testify about how he was a poll worker and had received training, and in that training there was some instructions on making it difficult for poll challengers. Were you in the room for that part of the testimony?
I was over in the...
in another room?
Yeah.
Could you hear it, or?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so in his testimony, he said, there was these instructions during the training, there was a lawsuit, there was instructions to the Secretary of State to not do those things, and yet that message didn't seem to be delivered. Would you agree with that as being part of the confusion?
I would say that again gets back to the fact that this was a rush process.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which again gets back to the, how much time did you guys allow the clerks to do their job?
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, there's always there's a reason for a problem.
So were you a poll challenger, a watcher, a worker? I don't remember, I'm sorry.
I'm a lifelong Republican.
Okay.
Until this election.
Okay. But did you have I just wondered if you had a title. You said you were at TCF.
I was an election challenger, yeah.
A challenger, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, what I saw it was disturbing, and I could see how people could be, you go in a very large room, it's really hot. I had a little thermometer with me to check my temperature through the course of the day. It was 85 degrees in there. It was really warm. There were too many people. People are shouting, people are yelling. There's the sharp elbows thing. You got folks that are upset with just having to be there. And because they're untrained, and there's that ignorance factor, right? Ignorance isn't the same as stupidity. It's just not knowing something. There's many things that you're ignorant about, probably heart surgery, right? How to fix a carburetor, brake lining, right? There's 1,000 and million things that we're just simply ignorant about. And there was a large Facebook and other social media, come on down, we need you. So you got a lot of people who are just completely untrained, had never done it before, and they're told, look out for fraud. At every single rally the president had, he said this election was going to be filled with fraud. Tweets galore, same thing. This election is a fraud.
Sir, were you working during the shift when the ballots came in late in the morning?
I arrived at 5:55 on the 4th, the day after the election.
5:55 in the morning.
And then I left at 10 o'clock at night.
Okay.
Was that Wednesday?
So according to past testimony, that was the time of the most tension, is when you were there then?
I was there all day. I was there for 16 hours. I was working another poll site on election day.
Okay.
So my day election day was busy. And then, so.
Senator McDonald, did you have a question? No? Senator Irwin? No? Thank you very much for your testimony, sir. Appreciate
Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this.
Next, I have Matthew Shepard, followed by Maria Menzel-Brown, and then Polly McNichol. Mr. Shepard?
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the Senate
Close
Oversight
to this
Committee.
good afternoon, evening.
Not yet.
A constituent of yours from Schoolcraft County ran for county sheriff up there, and he witnessed some issues of concern regarding the county clerk not allowing individuals to question polling and what have you. That testimony has been submitted to your clerk. I also submitted my testimony of my area, and I'll read it out just real quick. Election integrity is the utmost importance to preserving our freedom through what was written by our nation's framers in the Foundation of Liberty through one of the greatest documents ever written, the U.S. Constitution. On Monday, November 23rd, 2020, I attended a Stop the Steal U.S. rally in Lansing, Michigan. Liberals expect us to respect the vote, as one of their signs said, as certified by corrupt government officials. 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans on the board of canvassers, 3-0 certified with 1 abstention, declaring Biden successful in this election. They should respect the truth. The truth is Biden and his co-conspirators, i.e. Michigan's executive branch, corrupt politicians, Governor Whitmer, Attorney General Nessel, and Secretary of State Benson, definitely stole this election in 2020, and most likely in 2018 with Dominion ballot machines. I would also speculate the Democrats did the same in 2008 and 2012 for Obama's reign of destruction in America. Biden's supporters also had signs made up, quote, "Follow the law," and I responded to them, "Follow the Constitution, not unconstitutional mandates made by executive orders from tyrannical governors throughout this nation." Another sign said, "BOC, do your job," which I responded, "Yes, the Board of Canvassers should do their job and verify the votes, not just certify the votes blindly."
One minute.
With all these signs, I imitated Speaker of the House Pelosi tearing up the Trump sign, or State of the Union address, by tearing up their ignorant signs. I found it rather peculiar whenever I visited another neighboring communities, absentee ballots for those who voting in person, for those who feared voting in person with all the fear-mongering in this nation, along with all of our active duty military personnel absentee ballots being handled behind closed doors by election polling workers. When I inquired as to why, I was told that was the way they decided to do things. Sadly, the GOP is allowed the past 2 elections to be stolen, and top Michigan legislature leaders, Speaker of the House Lee Chatfield, Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey, continue to pander to the tyrannical governance. Respectfully, Matthew Shepard, co-chair of Constitution Party Midwest Region and second vice chair for State Taxpayers Party of Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, were you, and forgive me if you mentioned this at the beginning, were you at TCF on Election Day?
Not
or
TCF,
the day after?
just my local areas.
You were a poll watcher or worker at another?
I wasn't a poll watcher. I was just constitutional advising.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Parker, who I called earlier, has come. So if Mr. Parker, are you? Please come ahead. I know it's logistically complicated with in multiple rooms and social distancing, so try to make some allowances.
Yeah, and they said they were going to come get us when
Yeah,
I was going to be called, so we got over here.
well, and we had a bunch of people who didn't show up, and then I had to read names faster, and so there was a little confusion there. So thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I did, my son did get the call in the morning. He called me about a minute after I got out of bed. He said, "Dad, they need poll watchers, challengers down at Coble Hall." He said, can you give me any information? So I made some frantic calls, and he went down. I had wanted to go down previous. My wife, you see some of the physical conditions I have, said, no way you're going down there. But I came upstairs, said, hon, I gotta go. And so I went, and we got trained down there underneath the Election Integrity Fund. And the way I understood, there were at least 135 table groups, and I'm not sure how many Election Integrity Fund people were in there, but I knew my son was in there and had to leave to go pick up his sons. And I did not believe that they were granting other Republicans to replace them. We did know that they were kicking some out, and so I knew they were short, and yet they came out and said, no, they had plenty, and they would not let us in. I was there when they were boarding up the windows. And I don't know that Charlie the Duff, he showed up and interviewed somebody, and then they started letting in about 6 at a time. I never did make it in before I was too tired. I can't stand very long, so I had very often had to sit down. But it should be amazing to us that only Republican and nonpartisan workers were denied access to legally observe what is supposed to be a fair and transparent election. And it should not even be questioned when a Republican watcher or challenger is not at each table group. In the name of honesty and integrity, every Democrat involved should demand that the process stop when without Republican eyes. This lack and the cheering and the denial should be regarded as reprehensible and manifestation of fraud with no other proof required. I mean, I've heard several times today, do you have proof? It's like, man, when you're denied access, that should be sufficient proof.
1 minute.
And as legislatures, I would just encourage you guys, the least you can do is pass legislation to require maybe a revote. I heard the one gentleman not too long ago talk about the different counties. To me, what would be a few more weeks if we actually made people feel like we had a transparent and fair election? Because right now, I would agree, most people that I know do not believe at all that we're anywhere close to that. And I would just, for the sake of the republic, I'm 67 years old, and I cannot stand the idea that our country could go down under an unfair election.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any members have questions? Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Next, I have Maria Menzel-Brown, followed by Polly McNichol, followed by Marion Sheridan. Is Maria here? Maria, not in the room. Is she coming? Okay, we'll set that aside for now. Is Polly McNichol here? Welcome. After Polly, it would be Marion Sheridan, followed by Patty Kamegata. Oh, she wrote here that she was not at TCF, so put that one aside. Then it would be Joe Farkas. So Polly McNichol, welcome.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
I was at TCF Center as a poll challenger, kind of the belly of the beast. Real quick, it's a longer story than this, but what I watched, one of the incidents, Mrs. C, it was written on her shirt, brought down a box of ballots. Since they're in stacks of 50, I could estimate it was about 500 ballots. Gave this box of ballots to 3 ladies sitting at a table just off the platform. Excuse me, I'm nervous. One of the ladies, the far left one, tried to get our attention. She ended up giving us notes that were stuck on all these ballots, the sticky notes. She ended up giving us 4 of these notes. They read, received November 4th, enter as November 2nd. these three ladies were entering these ballots in to the verified voter system. She also got my attention, turned around, tried to get me to see her laptop monitor, which I leaned in and saw, and she wanted me to see the signature. The signature on the screen was some huge circles like that, the signature. Signature on the ballot was little tiny vertical sticks. It wasn't even in the same solar system, definitely different signatures. And this one lady that was trying to help us ended up being Jesse Jacobs, the whistleblower. Onto the tabulators, I witnessed multiple times stacks of 50 ballots being put through the tabulators multiple times. If they'd have been cleared, we would have no way of knowing, because the supervisors for the tabulators made sure that the metal boxes they put the finished ballots in were so far behind the tabulators and made us stand behind those boxes. We were at least 12 feet from them and wouldn't allow us to get any closer to them. About signing in and signing out, they had us sign in, not out, and said that we had plenty of us in there. Wednesday night, there were 10 of us in the room. I mean, us as Republican poll challengers, sorry. Yet, when I left, there were still people in the lobby that were being barred from coming in. Still only 10 Republican poll challengers in the room. I witnessed the military ballots being duplicated. I just thought it was strange that only Biden's name was selected, no down ballot, and I watched multiples. I don't know how many I watched, and not one of them was for Trump. I thought that was really strange, especially being military. You must know in your heart that this election was fraudulent. There's no question of it if you really are sensible. And we all pray that you do the right thing. Pay attention to Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, and name the electors for Donald Trump. And I really appreciate you listening to me. Oh, good timing.
Perfect timing, yes. Thank you for your testimony. I know that we're planning to hear from Jesse at a later date, so thank you for that. Do any other members have a question? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Did Maria come into the room by any chance? No, okay, well, we'll call on her later then, again. Oh, this one here says that she's unable to be here, but she's attached the affidavit, so. That brings us to Joe Farkas. Joe Farkas, followed by Terry Begas, followed by Vicki Collar. Is Vicki here? Why don't you come on up? If Joe Farkas or Terry Begas can hear me, come on this direction towards the room. After that will be Nancy Tissio.
Hello, good afternoon.
Welcome to the Senate Committee, Vicki.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I start off like, my table that I had was, they didn't get very many ballots, probably 200 for the most nights, so we weren't that busy. But so one thing that I had seen was the truck that came in between 3:30 and 4, and there was golf carts, and I was sitting on one of the golf carts back there because my table wasn't doing anything, and I was just sitting there, and I seen the door open. I heard a lot of commotion about what were all these ballots. And then so I walked over, and I went by the door, and I seen the white truck from the city, looks like, you know, the city white pickup trucks, and they had the symbol on it. And there was one guy driving it, and he had a mask on, but looking at his eyes, you know, I would say Asian descent. And I know he brought in at least 3 dollyfuls of the boxes, the white boxes with the paper cardboard on them, and took them over by the platform that the people were standing on. Somebody did mention, like, where did they come from? He goes, I don't know, I'm just the driver, was his statement. And And that's basically, you know, I don't know where the ballots came from, but I know it was after 3 o'clock in the morning that they came, and there was quite a few of them, and there was quite a few people that seen it come in, and they looked just like the ballot boxes that were brought to the tables, and you could see the yellow envelopes of the voter bag, you know, that were in there.
I don't want to rush you. Can I ask a question, or?
Yeah, you can ask
Okay.
a question. I just,
So,
nervous.
were you watching them open the boxes after they were unloaded?
no, I did not open, no, because where they took the boxes at was over, because I was back by the back door, because that's where my table was at, and I didn't want to leave that table, because they kept, like, every once in a while, you get a stray ballot. So I had watched him take them over by the table, and I know I counted at least 3 trips, but I don't know if he made any more, because then I went back to
Okay,
watching my table.
all right. Does any other member have any questions? Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to come in.
All right, thank you.
Joe Farkas. Is Joe here? Terry Begas. Is Terry here? And just in case I'm mispronouncing that last name, she's from Plymouth, so Terry from Plymouth. Nancy Tissio? Is that you? All right, great. After Nancy, I have John McGrath and Donna Ross. Welcome to the Senate Committee. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm from Macomb County, and I was a ballot challenger on Monday the 2nd at TCF, and on Tuesday, the election day, I wanted to work at the polls because I heard, you know, things about the polls. So on Tuesday...
Can I interrupt you for just
Yeah.
a second? Can you talk a little louder
Oh,
for the
sure.
microphone?
I'll
That'd be
get
great.
closer.
Thank you.
So Monday I worked at TCF, and I watched them, you know, on Monday they were taking the ballots out of the outer envelope. And it went pretty smooth, I have to admit. There were a couple of things that concerned me, and I, you know, addressed them. One was 80% of the ballots that were at my table 93 were closed with packaging tape. And I thought that was odd. You know, I mean, 83%, like 80% of the ballots were closed with packaging tape. That seemed different to me. Another thing that I thought was like horrible is that whoever like marked the outside, the ballot number on the outside of the outer envelope, they wrote it in like a light green crayon. And so you couldn't, you know, 6 feet away, you couldn't see if that ballot number matched the ballot number that was marked on the outside of the envelope. And then, you know, what I thought was odd was the people that were just taking the ballot out of, they were taking the ballot out of the inner sleeve, these 2 ladies, and they were turning it around so that the number would be on top. You know, they'd take it out, they'd open it up, they'd look at it, fold it back up, put it in to make sure the number was on the top. But they had ink pens, and I thought, why did they have ink pens by where they're at? So I kind of brought a lawyer over, and we thought, why do you need an ink pen by where they were at? All their job was to turn the ballot over. So that day wasn't, you know, that bad. Then the next day, I went to Henry Ford High School. Is that all right?
You have 1 minute left.
Oh, Henry Ford High
Sorry.
School. And when I was the only Republican in the gymnasium, there were 6 precincts. And after like about 2 hours, I realized they were giving.
The 2 most common reasons people go to see plastic surgeons are undoubtedly wrinkles and laxity, otherwise known as sagging skin. But is surgery really the only solution? Well, cosmetic procedures certainly.
We ended up calling the war room in Lansing, because I said, no, they have to call the clerk and have the ballot spoiled before they can issue him another ballot. And they didn't agree with me, so we got that straightened out, and that was true. They had to call the clerk. Well, the clerk wasn't answering. They weren't getting any answers. So I know they were just continuing to give people ballots that had, you know, the question mark, because no one would answer at the clerk's office. And when I went to precinct 275, the girl, I said, what are you doing when they have the question mark? She goes, oh, I just write their names down. And she had a list of like 25 people. I go, no, that's not the process. And she goes, what do you mean? And it turned out she wasn't even a poll worker. She was supposed to be a Democratic poll challenger, but when she got to the building, she didn't know what she was doing. She didn't, obviously she wasn't trained well because she didn't even
Okay.
know what her job was.
Thank
And-
you.
All right.
Oh.
But I mean, to me, people got 2 ballots.
Thank you. Senator Lucido.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Nancy. You mentioned lawyers. How many lawyers were there?
There was probably 5 Democratic lawyers.
5 Democratic lawyers. How many
No
Republican
none.
lawyers?
There wasn't one until like 5 o'clock. I was there 6:30 in the morning. She didn't come till 5 in the evening,
What time did you get there?
6:30,
What time did you leave?
8:30. I finally left. None of them could, balance their
Did
books.
any of the lawyers or make statements regarding this hand truck, cart, dolly that had all these ballots in it?
No, that's at the TCF. I was at a high school.
Okay.
But the one lawyer said, well, he was going to take that list of 25 and he was going to spoil the ballots. I don't know.
All right, that gets me some idea. But there was no lawyers where you were, except Democratic lawyers? How'd you know there were Democratic
They
lawyers?
told me. I was the only Republican in the whole room.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you very much for
You're
your
welcome.
testimony. Did you submit things in writing?
I did, and a video
Okay.
affidavit.
Thank you. John McGrath. Is John here?